Good morning, everyone. And we will begin our Friday, September 12th Ways and Means meeting. And we'll all stand for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, before us we have our agenda for the day. Do we have an approval for the agenda?
We have a few changes to it.
Okay.
We added the 7A intergovernmental agreement for planning and zoning services. We're removing the health insurance report under item 11, and then adding 2 miscellaneous resolutions related to a DNR trust fund grant and revenue sharing, opposing the cut. And then I want to talk about the shutdown potential losses to the county for that.
All right. Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, moving forward, approval of the minutes for August 15th, 2025. Moved and supported. Commissioner Holmes. Oh, yes, in the first line.
We'll make that correction.
Okay. Anything else? So we'll move the minutes as amended. Okay, all right. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, the minutes as amended are approved. We are now at limited public comment. You have 3 minutes. Please come to the podium. Introduce yourselves.
Good morning. Bill Hendry and MSU Extension. Just want to take a few minutes, or 3 minutes, no more than 3 minutes, just to clarify some things in regard to the loss of funding for MSU Extension. I've seen media reports. I've answered a lot of questions myself, and there seems to be some misunderstanding. Well, first of all, let me state this way. As you all have stated, there are a lot of unknowns yet, right? We sit here at September 12th. It's been a difficult week already for many of us. But we sit here at September 12th, and it's not October 1st yet, and we don't have a state budget. A lot of unknowns. There's a lot of unknowns as far as county funding when it comes to that with revenue sharing. Realize that. A shutdown, what does that impact? We'll find out. But one thing that is still not done yet is the gavel's not fallen on the final budget. And until October 1st, MSU Extension is fully funded by our local partner, and that's Eaton County. And so I'm thankful for that. And that probably leads to some of the misunderstanding. The fact that if we still have that opportunity, we're going to always show up. And I've stated that before. But specifically with 4-H, I just want to address that because this is where the misunderstanding is. If there is no funding for a local program coordinator, there will be no local program coordination. Leading to that misunderstanding is the fact that behind the scenes, when we've been without a staff person because they quit or went on to something else, our 4-H program supervising coordinator, the supervisor, has driven hours day after day to help interview volunteers, to help review financial statements for those clubs on a monthly basis, to help make sure they do an asset inventory on a yearly basis, to make sure that they're in compliance with the financial regulations of 4-H International. And without that clover, there is no 4-H. So if we lose ultimate funding for 4-H, there will be no 4-H. Now, it doesn't happen on October 1st or October 2nd. Like I said, we do everything we can. But I think that misunderstanding needs to be cleared up. I just wanted to take this time to do that. Thank you.
All right, anyone else? All right, there'll be a second opportunity. Oh. Good morning, Barb.
Barbara Rogers. I guess I want to support the extension office, but I also want to say, and a lot of you don't know this, but this old lady was around, and is the 4-H'ers built that 4-H building down there on the fairgrounds. We raised money, we did scrap irons, we did everything. I remember, because I was there for the groundbreaking ceremony for that. And I guess this is a challenge to 4-H to see how strong they are. They could do some money raising. They could have money raisers and help and give the county some assistance. I'm sure there's business people in the county, if they knew the situation, would support 4-H. And they can't be afraid to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, there will be a second opportunity for public comment towards the end of our meeting. Moving forward to item 6, Equalization and Property Description Director.
Tim is not here today, so really all we need to do with this is to move forward with the 2025 tax rate request that will go to the full board. So this is the maximum amount that we're able to levy, and we had rollbacks in all of our millages. And he will be here and available on Wednesday.
Okay, so moved and supported. Any discussion? Just moving this forward to the full board. All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right. Item number 7, intergovernmental agreement for planning and zoning services. And I see Chris coming to the podium. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning. So this is an agreement that we put together for the townships to continue, for the 11 townships that we do planning and zoning for now. It's a 3-year agreement. They have to notify, or we have to notify if anybody wants out a year ahead. So like at the end of year 2, if they didn't want to re-sign when the contract was up, they would have to notify us. Do you guys have any other questions or concerns?
Mr. Holmes.
I was wondering if you could tell how many of the townships have been contacted. I suppose all of them have been contacted. How many are leaning towards this agreement with the county or trying some other options?
Right now, I would tell you that there are at least 9 that we know are leaning towards signing the contract out of the 11.
Okay.
Commissioner Barber.
In previous meetings, you stated that we needed all 11 in which for this to work. And I know now you aren't going to get all 11, because I know of at least one township that has chose to go their own way.
Correct.
You have another one that's probably going to go, and then you have one that's just really not saying anything at all. So I don't think this agreement is feasible anymore.
Yeah, and the conversations that we've had with the controller's office is that we would stay with the 15,000 and then reconcile at the end of the year if we needed to.
Well,
Is that,
Well, we would do that if we had all 11, but the discussion that we had is that the cost would increase if we didn't have all participation. Now, obviously, it's based on the final budget that we would come up with, so we'd have to look at that. The concern would be that this contract shows the 15,000, and then we'd have to rely on them agreeing to pay if we only had, if we had 2 back out or 3 back out. So there is a concern with setting the county up for the potential to not have the full funding. Now, we can reconcile and charge them, and we can put language like that in here. It's the complication in how we have to do that, because we can't just do it for specified townships. The county can't say we're going to do it for these 9 townships, we have to actually, remember, it's the county ordinance. So we had a little bit of that discussion with the townships, and the idea was if we knew, which we still to this day don't know all participation, if we knew that we could set something up and try to work with the others. But there's a complication because it's our ordinance. So they still, if we don't have all participation, have to look at an ordinance. So we have some difficulty and some challenges with that right now. Did I cover that?
Yeah, and I believe the contract that sits before you, the reconciliation is just a credit if they paid over what expenses actually were. There's not a reconciliation back to the county if expenses exceed 15,000, which unfortunately with the two or the one for sure and the possibility of two does put a question mark on how much general fund would have to be allocated to make up the difference to meet that 15,000 maximum.
Yes, Commissioner, excuse me, Commissioner Wright.
Okay, so, would we charge them hourly rates then for the services provided?
No, that's a really difficult thing to put together, and Chris and Brandy could speak more to that. That's kind of like putting it together like a legal office would do, where they're charging by the hour. The work that we do, plus we share two offices, construction code and planning and zoning, trying to time dock everything, that's an ideal world where we would like it, but it would be very difficult to do it. So as an example, Brandy picks up the phone to do something, she gets interrupted with construction code. She's got to document all that. We'd need additional staff just to track the hours that she and her staff would work on. So, we're getting into a complex situation where townships want to do this. I think, I don't want to speak for the board, but I don't think anybody wants, to not have planning and zoning in our local communities. But again, now it's up to them because it's a non-mandated county service. So the fact that originally we were told that they were all in agreement to do this and pay, it's put a monkey wrench into it. And still not knowing. So today, we only know of one that's backed out. I received a signed agreement today from another, but we don't know what's happening with the others. So we're kind of in that holding pattern. But we're also in a situation in which, we can do away with the ordinance effective October 1. We could do away with it effective a different date. But no matter what we do, these townships have to do work to establish what they're going to do. And the board can make the decision to do away with it, and then they're on their own. Or you could do something where you're saying for a month or whatever time period. But Chris and Brandy, Claudine could speak to the fact that it is not an easy process to go through and get a master plan and to create their own ordinance. So we're looking at some complex situation, yeah.
Well, and I can tell you that the one that we know is not gonna stay with the county, they haven't even begun the process, or maybe have just begun since they made the decision to go,
Just last week,
create their own planning and zoning.
yeah.
And it's months, in my opinion, and I think Brandy will agree, it takes months to get it set up properly. And that's and they asked that question, you're gonna continue until we're ready, and we don't have an answer for that.
Well, the idea with that originally was that if we didn't have enough participation and the county just didn't do it, that we would continue on potentially making a recommendation to extend 3 months or a couple of months so that they had time to get everything together. But not knowing that we would just have one who didn't want to do it, but the others all want to, or two. That's what's put the difficulty, because the idea originally was to have everybody an all or nothing, as Commissioner Barber said. So now we're at that point where the board has to look at, do we want to do planning and zoning as a county ordinance? Because we can't limit it to a community excluding. They would have to adopt their own ordinances. Am I missing anything, Chris, or? Okay.
Okay, anyone else? comments? Commissioner Barber?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion that we don't move forward with this resolution.
Can I get a second? Well, I will second that. I think, given the discussion that I was a part of for Eaton Township in particular, and the rumors that we hear, and granted they're rumors, we don't have this in fact yet, but if 3 townships decide to opt out of this, there's $45,000 right there that you're not going to have. So I would see that the possibility of the cost rising for the remaining townships is almost inevitable. So do we have any other discussion on this? What is Commissioner Haskell?
Yeah, being from a charter township, I don't feel like I want to have a deciding vote on it, so I'm going to take your guys' leadership on it. But I do wonder, is this something that instead of voting not down today, that we table instead, so that it can be brought up if better news comes forward? Or are we just trashing it now and can pick it up again later?
You could, I mean, we're in a tough spot, but we could not take any action and do something in October. So that means you wouldn't eliminate the ordinance until other decisions were made. I would prefer not. You could call a special board meeting once we have all of the information, but that's kind of a lot for staff and the board, obviously, for one thing. So if you're going to hesitate, not know what to do, I would say that we bring it back in October and that we just continue business as is until that point in time.
So just to clarify, was that what you were thinking, Commissioner Barber? No, you just want to?
I can expand on that point,
please.
right? This was initiated way back in April and May, right? And here we are, the townships haven't decided, right? So I think there's 2 courses of action here. 1, the townships are dragging their feet to see what this board will do, or 2, they don't want to do it. That's the 2 courses, right? In my eyes, right? So, hey, we were told by this department that they needed all 11, multiple times, okay? They don't have all 11, so it's null and void.
You're right.
Overall, it's a non-mandated service that's being provided. And so that's really going to mess up getting that September 30th budget balanced without using more of our funds, because we're going to have to show how that staffing's going to continue.
That's what you would be doing essentially if you wait until October. So if you waited until the October board meeting, and at that point you made the decision to get out of the business, it's on the townships, then you would have those costs through that board meeting date. But the issue that we have, and Chris and I have talked about this, you have things in the works right now. So our thought anyway is that we're going to have to continue those services out. Like we talked about in the sheriff's office, there are cases that are going on, so you wanted to make sure you had officers that were going to do the cases that are in the county, right? It's the same type of thing. We can't just leave these conditional use permits out there. So we'll have to do that, but that's just part of business. We did that when construction code was eliminated from different areas like Windsor Township. We rolled out those, so that's really where you're at with it.
So in that sense, it would be like no new business after the October board meeting, but 3 months to wrap up or what have you. Yeah, right, something like that.
Yeah, so I would say with that, no new business after September 30, the October decision, so no new business, so that people aren't
We can
rushing.
run the business that's right now at hand through finishing. But we're not, at this moment, we're not looking at until we know further decisions on this, how to fund non-mandated. Okay, because people need to know that our funds are running out. So,
Yeah, that's been the discussion, mandated versus non-mandated.
yep. Like animal control.
Chris, I have a question. Would it be, I think it would be prudent to do this, but would it be possible to have another township supervisors meeting and maybe include part of the boards, I don't know, trustee boards, but in the discussion, but bring them all back together and talk about the future of this planning and zoning and construction code and how we're gonna go about solving this problem. At this point, I've only heard from two townships, the two that I represent. One is a charter, so that's off the table. The other is general law, and they're the ones that opted out. So I think it's worth bringing them together for a more in-depth discussion, see what they see for the future. But I agree, I don't think we should go forward with this the way it's written right now, because we don't have 11 townships in there. And we really don't know how many more may choose to not go with this.
No, I agree, and I think in listening to you guys speak, you know, and having that cutoff date, I understand that completely. But if these townships aren't ready and people are coming to my office on the construction code side, and they don't have a zoning referral for setbacks and things of that nature, what is my office supposed to do as far as applying for permits?
Well, let me just ask this question. If we no longer have an ordinance, that's no longer construction code's concern, because we wouldn't have a county ordinance. So Chris, I'm just saying,
With you. I know what
that's
you're
the
saying.
truth, that's the reality, and that's the mandated versus non-mandated. So, I mean, we've had that discussion. It's, again, the difficult piece, and I'll speak to what Chris is saying. This is not what he wants to see. He wants to make sure that everything's done right, that you don't have a neighbor that has an issue with where something is on a property line. It creates an issue for his office.
Well-
People are going to come to you for years after
Well,
a
and
decision to
and if it
eliminate.
gets bad enough, I mean, if somebody builds a barn or a house and it's over the property line 5 feet and it gets figured out, they're not only gonna come to me, they're gonna go to the township, and then they're gonna come to this board.
But we wouldn't at that
No.
point have an ordinance, so the county would have no involvement in anything.
Commissioner Barber.
I would just like to state that construction codes needs to worry about codes. And if somebody builds a pool barn on somebody else's property, then there'll be other actions. But that's not your concern come 1 October.
Fair enough.
Okay, any other discussion? Commissioner Mott.
To your point about having another meeting, we've had 2 meetings already with the townships. And in the last meeting, we discussed the other option of calculation, which was the SEV for each township. And one of the townships would be paying probably about a good $10,000 more than the 15 grand if we went with the SAV. And I wanted to know, and I asked flat out if that we went that route of calculation, would there any townships be bowing out? And yes, there was another township that would be bowing out. So if this fee goes up, because you've got other townships that are not going to be part of that group, there's potentially another township that would be gone. So I think we've already had the discussions enough with the townships at this point for them to make a decision. This is very unfortunate, because I don't think this is, in my opinion, I don't think this is the correct route that the township should go. We've already got zoning in place. We should be doing it. The county should not be out without zoning, and it shouldn't be up to these smaller townships to do it. But we tried. We wanted to keep it going, and I just with the way the townships are coming back to us, and, you know, it's their decision, and it's unfortunate, but it's not Brandy or Chris's fault or anybody's fault. I think this is just a course that the townships decided that they wanted to go. So as far as your point of having another meeting, I probably don't think that it's necessary.
Okay, well, I would like to get some communication back from the townships to say yes or no. I mean, it's that simple as that. The one thing I'm concerned with, and I agree with one of the statements you made, was that if this 45,000, if we have 3 townships that don't participate, and this $45,000 is then dispersed among the other remaining townships, that might be the impetus for them to say, no, not us either. So, and then where do we go? I mean, so,
Right now, the only communication we've gotten communication from, like I said in the beginning, 9 of them. The one we got communication with was Eaton and said they were out. There's another one that just hasn't communicated with us yet. There is a third one that is still talking, but Brandy and I believe from conversations that they're leaning to staying with us.
So that they
I
were
don't know.
told at the last meeting that we needed the information by September, by September 30 to let us know.
okay. All right, Commissioner Haskell.
I guess just one final thought. So if it does come down to just one township
That's not in.
that's not in, we take 15,000, we divide it amongst the 10 others that are in. So it'd be 1,500 extra. I guess, if we vote no on this, are we actually eliminating the ordinance?
So, no, you're not yet at this point.
Yeah.
You would have to do that.
That'd be a whole
in
separate vote.
that would be a separate vote.
I worry that if we vote no and it ends up being that just one township dropped out, that we're unduly punishing the 10 others that want to keep participating without even giving them an opportunity to say 1,500 we can absorb. So I'll look to the other side of the room here that, you know, that this is their constituents to see, but am I wrong by saying that feels like a little bit of a punishment to those that want to participate?
Well, I'll speak for the townships right now. I think they feel that this is a punishment in total. So I'm just saying, they do. Everybody does that has received a cut. That's the reality. It goes back again to mandated versus non-mandated. I'm tired of saying it, but that's what we've been discussing. But yes, you're right. I mean, they can agree to pay $1,500 more. There was a lot of discussion about not wanting to pay anything additional, but that was in the event that we had all 11 in and costs went up, which is why we talked about reconciling it, that we wouldn't increase that cost. So it's been unfortunate.
It is, and it's something that, you know, nobody wants to pay for something that they've never had to pay for, that they've gotten for free since the 50s.
Well, I wouldn't say
get
that,
that.
Chris, because they've been paying for this through taxes
Yeah,
since the
Well,
beginning.
and I'll speak to that just because I'm trying to speak for everybody, but Delta Township paid $4 million this year, and they're gonna pay $8 million next year. They didn't wanna do that. They feel that the sheriff is the county sheriff, and they are in the county. So, I mean, there's frustration from everyone when we're finding that. It's just, and it's not over. Because once things end and stop, that's when you're going to see what's occurred. You saw that with the sheriff. He had no staffing to do things. He eliminated shift after shift. It's created an uproar. Animal control, we have one staff member that's running that operation right now, and they're not obviously able to go out on calls. So we're seeing the impact of all the cuts and the fact that we can't hire.
Okay, any other discussion? All right, we have a motion on the floor, and Commissioner Barber, would you please restate your motion?
My motion is to not approve this resolution that stands before us.
All right, and it was seconded, so we will have a vote. I don't think we need a roll call on this, so all those in favor of not moving this forward, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right, there you have it. Okay, thank you, Chris. Okay, any other comments on what we just did?
The only thing that I'm going to say is right now, we can notify the township that this was not approved because it had the 11, we notify them. The ordinance still exists, so you are going to have costs unless you eliminate the ordinance on September 30. I'm not saying, I wouldn't recommend that as an option right now. I would recommend that this is discussed in October as to whether or not you want to handle the ordinance. We do have a budget set up, but it is in another fund. So there's right now no general fund contribution. If in October it's eliminated, like I said, mid-October at the board meeting, those costs, you can cover those costs with the permit fees that were increased at a prior meeting here. So I don't think there's going to be any general fund costs there, but we can't do anything right now. I don't think eliminating the ordinance at this point is the right way to go.
So,
Commissioner Wright.
so, Connie, that means come October though, our townships need to know that at our next meeting, we're absorbing this cost now. But the drop dead at the kitchen table is October, so you better get your ducks in order and decide, all of you have your own little meeting, because we can't carry this.
So what we'll do is we'll probably have Chair Mott send a letter to each of the townships explaining what has happened thus far, and that the ordinance will be discussed in October, and that no new, no new business related to the ordinance will occur after September 30. So that's what they'll be notified. No.
31 October, because if we
Well-
if we don't decide until the October board meeting, you can't backdate it.
No, you can't, but what we can do is say that we're not taking on anything new after September 30. We just don't do the permits. We're not in, it's not a legal issue to not do anything for those days. It's just that the ordinance is still in effect.
Chair. So just for some clarification for the department, for staff, can they still process building permits? So if somebody comes in with a zoning referral to do a building permit, is that okay to do, or are they just not to process conditional use permits, Board of Appeals applications, and those things?
That would be the not do that, but as far as construction code functioning, that would continue with what they have.
Just for clarification. The other thing I would just add is it's a very, not complicated, it's not an easy task for townships to adopt their own master plans and zoning ordinances to move forward. So if you repeal the county ordinance in October, you effectively leave all the townships with nothing. So at minimum, at bare minimum, it would take them 6 months to adopt a master plan and an interim zoning ordinance, ideally a year. So that's something to think about before October as well. If you just repeal the ordinance in October, these 11 townships will have no zoning at all until they can develop their own.
No, it's not beyond the possibility that they just adapt or adopt the current county zoning as their own, correct?
You have to have a master plan to have a zoning ordinance. The master plan is what they don't have, that would take them at minimum 6 months to develop. Because they would have to hire a consultant, they would have to have public meetings, and then they would have to have a 63-day review period to send it out to all the other surrounding townships. It's not a quick, easy process. They would have to hire a contract, which would have, consultant, which would have a fee associated with it.
Okay. Anyone else? Commissioner Barber.
Yes, so it sounds like we're gonna have to have a discussion on how long this department's gonna last, right? Because if we're getting advice saying that standing up a master plan is a minimum 6 months, right? I mean, I truly don't want to punish the townships, right? But there comes a point where there's no money left. So, I mean, we're looking at funding this department for 6 months then.
Well, I'm going to say, Claudine is correct in everything that she said, but that isn't the county, I hate saying this, but that is not the county's responsibility. The county has an ordinance. If townships want that ordinance, then they sign on as far as a contract. The problem again goes to, if they don't all participate, then it's no longer a county ordinance. So the agreement could be that all 11 townships sign on for 6 months, and then we're done. But they have to agree to that. and they're paying for it.
Or the townships that want the service sign on for the 15,000 because that was the price tag given to them. And that department find other ways to reduce their cost to operate within those.
That's a difficult.
Well, we're in difficult situations.
No, I know, it's just going to be difficult. We can do the 15,000 with 10. I mean, you can do something like that and reduce costs. So you leave it down to one person doing all of the work. Again, the struggle comes in, and this is what we have to remember. You can't, Eaton Township, because we know that they voted to not do this. Eaton Township has not adopted master plan or an ordinance. So they're still resting under ours. If you keep it open for all 10 and not Eaton Township, you now have that issue with, you still have a county ordinance. So is Eaton Township going to pay? So the idea would be that Eaton Township and all the other townships would pay a cost while you still leave that ordinance active and they all go and get their own master plan. That would be what my recommendation would be, but all of them would have to sign on to pay a dollar amount that we come up that covers our cost for that period of time. Then that keeps it going. If not, it ends up being county cost.
However, you have no authority over the township to tell them they have to do the master plan in 6 months. So basically, we're funding them again for 6 months.
I don't.
I mean, they're gonna pay, but, I mean, at the 6-month point, we're back to right.
We're done. Then you're done. You are right back here if you want to still hem and haw about it at that point. But if you set a cutoff date, if it's 6 months, whatever the cut, maybe you do it for a year.
We did.
I know, I'm not.
So we'd be right back to here, because we did set a cutoff date, and we're here.
If you, only if you,
6 more months,
yeah.
we'll be here.
We just didn't have a contract that indicated that because at that time, we were informed that all the townships were in agreement. That's the difficulty at this point. We just found out that one is not doing it. So that's where the difficulty comes in. I don't disagree with anything you're saying, 100%, but it's the difference of, do you want to eliminate all county planning and zoning at X date, or do you want to extend it but tell the townships the only way we'll do it is if you create an agreement and you all agree to pay until this date. If they don't get their master plan done and their own ordinance, that's on them. But you would have put it in writing, everyone agreed to pay this dollar amount for that period of time. Right now, this was set up to be a 3-year contract with the 1 year out, which is, that's the stability piece of it. But if you set it for 6 months, we're done. Then that's when you repeal the ordinance, but they have to agree to pay. That's the difference.
What's that? Well, I think it's to each of us commissioners who represent general law townships to get this message out to them. Written statement, whatever, watch the meeting here, so they fully understand what their future is, at least in the short term. And so we'll revisit this at a later date, I think, so.
So I'm just gonna say, I started this conversation with townships back in December, right after the vote went down. And I understand what you want to do, and you want to do it now. But going out to the townships and offering a whole new scenario, they're not, now you've got to give them a timeline to all get together and decide, and it's gonna take them months to even decide and come back to their board to say, yeah, that's good, so we'll be in this another year. I'm sorry, I love my township, I love Walton Township, and I wanted this to work, but keep going over and over this.
I'm not
I mean, I understand what you're saying, Mr. Chair, and I agree, and if it would work the way you're describing it, I would agree. And we could come back in October and say, yep, we're all in agreement, we're going forward, but that is not likely to happen. We can, I guess you can try. I guess you can, we go out to the township and say, we gotta have a decision, we gotta have it by October of our board meeting, and if you don't get back to us by then, we're done. You know, we can try.
Well, that's my point exactly. Let them know where we are today, and now it's up to them. If they want to go ahead and have their own planning, zoning, and construction, and they need a master plan, they better get moving. Yes,
I
Claudine?
think the difference is that up until now, they are of the opinion that we're moving forward. They were told if all 11 townships are on, we're going to move forward. That's the premise they've all been operating under. So they didn't know that at the end, they weren't going to get it and that they now need their own master plan. Because they've all been under the assumption they're going to do a contract with us and move on. So I think if you give them an end date, you say 6 months, you put it in a resolution, 6 months, and the county will no longer provide this service, then they know with no, matter of fact, in 6 months it's done, we have to get moving on this. They're going to know they can't take months to make a decision. And if they do, that's on them. You've given them notice. As of this date, the ordinance will be repealed. And then you've done everything that you can to set them up for success if the county's not going to continue that service.
Okay. I think this will be a hot topic at Public Works and Planning. All right, any other comments? Okay, Commissioner Wright.
Patty, about how much would it take to do that extension for like 6 months? But the other townships that wanted to sign on are gonna have to already start master plans and everything, because they won't know if the drop dead 6 months down the road is coming.
Well, they would know because you would say that right away, that the ordinance would be repealed at the 6 months. That would be it. So you're not saying if everybody now comes on board, you're saying it's done. That's really what, like Claudine was saying, you have to give an end date. Otherwise, we do, as just like Commissioner Barber and Chair Mott said, you're just going to keep limping along, because that is really the easier way to go, right? I mean, if we just continue to do it and continue. But you're looking at, as far as cost, you're looking at a minimal service level by planning and zoning. So you could say that we are only going to operate X number of days doing the service that we're doing right now. I mean, we could make the budget, as Commissioner Barber said, whatever we can choose that falls under the amount of money that we get in fee or revenue. And you can do that. It is right now in a separate fund, so there's no transfer coming from the general fund, and you haven't obligated, so when that money runs out, if the costs go up, that money runs out, then that money runs out.
Because see, we thought, my biggest concern is when we tell them we'll continue for 6 months, is that, like Chairman Mott said, we gave them all these months, and so then we thought we were on a path for all 11 townships, and this was just a formality. And right here at the end, which could be the same situation come 6 months down the road, right at the end, we got a couple of people, townships that don't want to do it. So we still would have 10 townships that wanted to do it, and they wouldn't have master plans. So now do we tell the 10 townships that really understand the need for a master plan, that they better start expending some funds to get a master plan?
So I just want to put it in, let's do simple terms because of what's going on in our state. We're looking at a state shutdown.
Oh, yes.
If you don't adopt this budget, if you don't adopt it for the general fund, you're looking at a shutdown. So now all mandated services are gone. That's planning and zoning. So you can stop doing that business effective October 1 because you can say we have no staff. And I'll use another example. If you have no staff because you can't hire People go off on leave, people quit, whatever the case may be. You can't provide the service anyway. There's nothing that says that we legally are bound to provide that service, especially at any serviceable level, because we won't have that. We won't have a serviceable level that we can even meet. It's our ordinance. You can make things take as long as you want. I'm not saying that that's what we want to do, but look at it in terms of a county shutdown. What happens? You don't provide non-mandated services. That's really what you're looking at. So, I mean, you have a lot of ways you can look at this right now, but it's a non-mandated service.
Thank you.
Well, let's move on then. Item number 8, Technology Services Director. I see Eric making his way to the podium.
Morning, everyone. Eric Daly, Technology Services Director. Brief update on projects that we've been working on since we last met. Happy to report that the internet service for the observatory at Fox Park, that project has been completed, tested, and is in place now for those staff that operate that observatory. Also working on our licensing renewals coming for the next upcoming fiscal year. We're just kind of looking to where the dust is settling with our operations, what our new normal is going to be. So we're working with a couple new vendors now, have some favorable pricing, and things are well on their way for our new fiscal year as far as licensing renewals. Our MCT project for those remaining cars for our Eaton County Sheriff's Department, those being for the new Delta contract and for the Central Command Unit here. That equipment has been ordered. The majority of it has arrived on site, and we're hopeful to have the last remaining pieces of that equipment in mid-October, and hopefully implementation will be completed by mid to end November, hopefully sooner. Gonna want to keep that update brief because I want to have some time to talk about the BEDHD, Barre Eaton District Health Department IT contract renewal. That's something that's been in place for the last 10 years, I believe is kind of what our anniversary at is on that. And I guess we're seeking a renewal, a blessing to renew that for the health department. Any discussion with that? I know Deputy Director or Controller Dawson has some insight on that contract if he wants to speak.
Thank you, Eric. So as you know, we've got this agreement that's been in place for quite some time, and we've talked about the history of it. At the time when the county took on this work, it was because of an emergency situation that had occurred and the department stepped up. But there's never been a direct allocation of staff. There's never been a direct allocation of a framework apart from the contract you see before you, which has largely remained unchanged, in my opinion, since this work is taken on. This year, we have made some changes in alignment with what we're doing overall. So first, we added a 15% section for service administrative support fee, similar to what we've done in other contracts and per policy, and explained the need for that and the reasoning to the health department. The next thing, okay, sorry, let me go to the right contract. Give me, sorry. The other piece that we had a discussion on was a transition period. This is a 12-month contract, which is what it's always been. But we put in there a transition discussion, which is just being candid with the health department and letting them know that we're getting out of the business of offering IT services. You know, so hypothetically, if a private firm was offering this, it'd be a lucrative contract, right? And it would pay over and above. And there'd probably be a lot of incentives built into it, and we just don't have the framework for that, right? So it's not like we can impart additional compensation to employees because they're working under a contract. That's not how governmental compensatory framework works, right? So discussions with the department is continuing to provide this service under the current staffing levels and framework is not long-term feasible. So we had the discussion and said 2 years. Originally, we talked about 18 months, and they asked for an additional 6 months. So we included a provision in there that if cost structure changes over the term of the contract, we'll meet to discuss cost sharing on it. But they've got a 12-month, we'll meet to hash out expenses for the last 12 months. But it's a 2-year notice that they need to decide if they're gonna do it on their own or contract out, barring a different decision by the board within a year. But I think unless you change the calculation of staff or compensation enough in time for that, I don't see us continuing the agreement unless you see otherwise. But I think we're, yeah. So we spoke with Rebecca, who will be the one taking over when Colette retires. So this was a decision being made with the long-term focus of the health department. And the request to make it 2 years instead of a year and a half was so that they can assess the Medicaid cut effect the federal government will have in 2026 on their budget so that they can include that as part of their decision-making in year 3. And other than that, I think that's pretty much the same agreement that's been passed.
That's correct.
Yep.
Any questions so far? Mr. Haskell?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we added the 15%, right? That's the main change for the 2 years going forward.
Exactly, the 15% and then the transition planning, and then the mid-contract year change if personnel expenses change in the term.
Sure, okay. And then, so annual amount was 163, almost 164,000, what would be revenues, right? Do we know in about year by year what the, I guess, the expenses are that we incur for this contract?
And that's part of getting back to we're a public entity. It's difficult, so we don't time dock because we don't have staffing per se. But I know the technologies, this includes hardware, software, and labor all encompassed in it, and it's not broken down on an itemized basis. But if it was a private firm, that's exactly what they would do. And they would charge for every individual service. So for example, 24/7, 365 access is covered. It's not explicitly in this contract, but if the network goes down at the health department, Eric's team is gonna drop whatever they're working on to get that network back up.
Sure.
But we haven't done line item billing in the past.
Okay, and like, if the technology director, this is what they want, then I'm 100% on board, but I think the board also needs to recognize that, like, this is technically a revenue right now. So it's, 2 years down the road, that is something that we will see leave our budget.
Yeah, arguably, if, because we do contract with police services, if there was appetite to try to do that, I'd say the framework we have right now just doesn't make contracting, because there are other communities that would probably love to contract with Eaton County for tech services. However, we're just not structured to really manage that as it is. I think a lot of that goes back to our 2014 wage study. Tech has changed dramatically over that time, including how it's compensated, how the work's performed. So within a year, and I know we had talked about the next year, you see Appendix A there, we're probably going to do a much more significant build out because, especially if they are leaving, they're gonna need to know, this is the hardware, these are the systems that we're divorcing, you need to get your own storage. So we will probably walk into a more itemized list just by nature of the fact of making those preparations.
Mr. Barber?
Yes, I agree. But I think since we are going to add the 15% surcharge, you have to do itemized, right? So that way, at this 1 year mark, we can actually see what it's costing us compared to what we're getting paid. That's the only way we're going to be able to do the analysis. And they're not another company, so we can share that information with that department, so that department can actually make a good contract, if they choose to go contracting, and they can make a good, educated decision. I don't know why we haven't done it yet. This needs to be across all the contracts. Anything we do with anybody else that we're receiving money, we need to itemize everything.
Yeah, well, it's ironic you say that because we have a couple leases for facilities that we're going to talk about. But I think this is just a bigger theme is contracts have just gotten pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed for years, so.
Again, goes Goes to the financial stability that we've all talked about, that it was just kind of doing business as it was, as it always has been, and the county should not have been going in that direction. So now that we've been working really hard in administration, all of our directors, all of the departments have been working really hard to kind of move to that. So we're there now. We'll get better.
And just for slight clarification, the fees that are identified in this contract are not all encompassing. We do have an itemized list of software, hardware subscriptions that the Berrien District Health Department pays for separate from this contract. And we do have that itemized and are set up with them. I have a capital improvement plan laid out for them, forecasting when their expenditures are going to come over the next 5 years. I've had those discussions with administration at the health department. So all of that stuff is well on its way and documented.
Good. There you go.
All right, any other questions, comments?
Does this take a?
Yes, so we would, administration would request a resolution of support in adopting this and providing the 2-year notice and moving forward with continuing to provide services.
Or
Moved and supported. Any other discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Any opposition? All right, there you go, Eric. Thank you. Now, on to item number 9, our communications director, Logan.
Good morning, Commissioners, Mr. Chair. I will keep this brief because you have to hear from me later. So sorry about that. Looking at our website here, a lot of these metrics are staying the same month to month. You know, we're at roughly 60% are new folks every month. That doesn't mean they haven't been on our site before, but in that time period, they're accessing a service or they're accessing something. What we can look at, though, is some of these negative insights and other insights. So right now, I'm working to isolate where dead clicks are happening, like almost 4,000 instances of folks clicking on a link to access information or access an external point, and it doesn't work. It's failing. There's a network error, there's a JavaScript error, there's something. So a lot of that could be, we have robust archives on our website. We have a lot of information on there where, so as we work to modernize the site, there's going to be instances where that's happening. So whether it's a JavaScript error, undefined or variable loss in something that is just erroring out, but if you refresh it, maybe will work afterwards, working to identify where those are. And AudioEye, which is the next thing I want to talk about, can help us do that, essentially. And so as you see in your packet, there is sort of an accessibility report for about a week's worth of data. We're still maintaining that site accessibility score of 99, which is great, and we have been assured is fairly unheard of, which is, we still have a lot to learn about how this functions and how it works and how to utilize it and how to fix everything. But thanks to the work we did to modernize the site over the last year and a half or so, we have some leeway, we have some time because we have a very high accessibility score. And so that helps the county in terms of liability. That helps folks access these services otherwise. And so we retain that 99 site accessibility score, which is our metric that we're just going to keep shooting for. And as we work to understand those parameters of some of these custom fix notices, as you can see, there's a list of different issues. There's different groups and labels. There's different guidelines that they use to measure whether it's been fixed or not. AudioEye does a lot of automated fixing. They have a team that also will go in after so much time and look and see if there's a custom fix that they can apply, they will do it. Or if there's a fix that I or the Technology Services Department have applied, they can look and see if we did it right or wrong or can help fix that. But there are some instances where we need custom solutions, whether that is we're missing a variable in JavaScript or something, and so we need to go in and try and fix it. I would be cautious when you look at the impact number on the right side there of this accessibility report. That is a guess. That is not a hyper-accurate determination on how many folks are accessing and seeing this error. In a week, an error where an element was hidden and somebody, couldn't define it, and maybe they have issues with sight, and so, but we didn't have the correct information in place for them to understand it. 99,000 folks didn't see that, but there's a potential that many could, essentially, is what I'd say. And so the other thing I wanted to say as well, lastly, is when you go to our website, if you look on the bottom right-hand corner, there's an accessibility tool there now where you can click. And so if you need assistance in terms of residents accessing something, whether they need to change contrast, whether they need something read aloud, whatever it might be, they now have that tool to utilize. And so any questions on AudioEye specifically or the website?
I don't see
Okay.
any.
One last thing, I've gotten a few calls from residents as well as a couple of commissioners have asked about that AI use policy that we've talked about in the past. That is not in your packet today, but I do want to talk about what will be in it. I'm working with Director Daly and Deputy Director Nybert in tech to figure out what this should and shouldn't look like, I guess. So I just want to go over a couple of the tenets here. So this policy would seek to ensure AI or machine learning used by Eaton County aligns with and complies with applicable laws and regulations, safeguards personal and confidential information, operates with transparency and accountability. Essentially, the ultimate goal is keeping what is called the human in the loop in everything we do. So if you're utilizing machine learning or AI in anything, the human in the loop is always there to define what that is and to check what that is before it reaches residents or any work product comes out. This policy would cover ethical and responsible use. We would define predictive and generative AI tools that are prohibited or not. We would define how we're going to utilize confidential data in AI. We will define what it would look like if a department or office wants to embed AI in a county systems, where and how that might work. AI replacing human processes, so any automation that fully would replace human decision-making, we would likely prohibit that. Transparency, accountability, continuous improvement, and all of this, is to assess, would assess other offices and departments and their compliance to this. And so a lot of folks ask, why do we want to do this? We should just not touch AI. AI can be a very powerful thing for us. In 5 years, 10 years, everybody is going to be using this. And if we don't have something in place, we have no safeguards, we're going to be rushing to catch up. And so the idea of this is to get it right. You see a lot of cities, other counties, the state jumping in, and other states across the country to try and set up a safeguard, whether it's super simple and we can adapt and amend it, which we will likely have to do, or overly complicated, those exist too, and we want to avoid that. We don't have the staff for that either. And that's the other point of this and any other policies we do, is we don't necessarily have the staff to administer a lot of these things. So we have to be careful on how we craft it. And so I'd like to say that, I'm looking at you, Eric, hypothetically next month we could have a draft for you, but I'm not going to make that promise to you. There's a lot of work we need to do. Tech Services is going to gather more information this month, actually, on this. I was able to go and hear out some members of the state and other municipalities on what they're doing, right and wrong. Michigan Municipal League has a lot of great information on it. And so October, November, maybe, I hope I have something for you. Any questions on our AI use policy?
Well, I have a question. And I know it's coming. And I'm not impressed with some of the AI stuff. As a matter of fact, I'm a little concerned about some of the stuff that's out there that is so fraudulent that you wonder how they got away with it. But anyway, what is the real benefit to AI? I mean, artificial intelligence, after all, is it trying to displace the intelligence of human beings?
That's a tricky question. It depends on its use. I mean, you can use it. I've used AI before when I'm like, I don't understand this MCL. Show me some links that I can find to get a legal opinion on things that have been published. There are folks that'll use it to write something. There are folks that maybe use it to automate a process, And so, is it useful? Sometimes. Is it dangerous? Sure, yes. But I think it's inevitable at the same time. So that didn't really answer your question.
I would add unfortunate along with inevitable. But, all right, any other comments, questions?
I think
Yes.
I'm going to meetings and everything is speaking of AI, and it's going to take a while until it gets to the major use of it, 5 years, or some are saying 5 to 10 type stuff, but incrementally, even when you call in for your, to talk to anybody, because you have to pick a number or whatever, That's all AI they're telling us. So I'm just real concerned too about, like, we have online payments for our dog licenses and for our county records and different things like that. So to be providing credit card numbers and, case information and stuff. So, yeah, I sit there and listen to the same thing you do, Mr. Chair. I'm real concerned. And I know young people are, I've seen in China, they pay for their Kentucky Fried Chicken orders by just looking at a camera with their eye. So, yeah, that was on 60 Minutes, sorry. But, so I do have concerns with all of my personal information going everywhere.
Yeah, that's part of, we should have something in place because you don't want to put in data into some of these services. There are services that have been around for a long time that utilize AI, and if you don't pay a certain subscription level, they're collecting your data and they're using it in their model. And so you don't want things from whether you plug in resumes to say who's the best candidate, you're plugging in people's personal information and that AI is learning that. And so we want to have parameters set so our staff and our offices know what they can do, what they shouldn't do,
And we're going to have to rely on all of you experts that are staff here at the county to protect us, to protect all of our residents. So best wishes as we go forward.
Okay, any other questions, comments? I would like to welcome our viewers in Nigeria. I see we got 0.1%.
Trying to contact you about your inheritance, Mr. Chair.
Those ones are not supposed to open.
Okay, anything else, Logan?
That is it for my report. You will inevitably hear from me later.
Okay, all right, thank you. All right, moving on to item number 10. Deputy Administrator, Human Resources Director Ben.
So I have 4 items on my agenda today, and then 2 just general updates I'll give at the end. So start off with the positions update. We filled 7 positions this month. We have 12 posted online, 5 of which are ongoing requisitions between the youth facility, parks, and sheriff's office. We have 25 positions on hold, of which 23 of those have been identified as budget reductions occurring on October 1st. So the next time you see this sheet, it will be much simpler because I will have removed out the budget reductions. So it will consolidate and probably be easier to read. So apologies for the small font. We have 1 open position within the administrative wing that's being recommended, and that's a assistant public defender position that we would ask get authorized. Couple quick facts, so the pressure being felt by the county and high turnover has carried costs for staff for a long time, having to cover those gaps. We talk about that each month. The Eaton County ratio this month for unfilled positions versus budgeted is 16.5%. That remain open and unfilled. Our average for the last 12 months is 13.55%. So just to give you the sense of what teams have been going through trying to provide coverage. With that, I would request a motion authorizing the 1 FTE.
Okay, moved and supported. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? All right.
Nope, I was just gonna turn it over.
So I took a break and talked to Director Garrison, and he's withdrawing this request given the fact that we're not moving forward and not knowing what's going on. The one thing that I would say in the future that we will probably have to look at would be something in relationship to construction code, but we would have to analyze that. They would not fill a position likely because we wouldn't have them doing the work, which they've left unfilled now. So he does not want to move forward with this.
With item B, you mean?
Correct.
Item B.
So it's done.
All right. Any questions from anyone on that? All right, so we're on to item C, revising parameters for starting salaries.
Absolutely. So while bargaining with 2 of our union groups, and this is not uncommon, things come up about, hey, can we take a look at this mid-contract? And sometimes you do, and that's what letters of understanding are for. They just modify a specific segment of a collective bargaining agreement for the term of, the remaining term of the agreement. So we are, after having discussions, the union asked if we could revisit. We had adopted for the first time ever a framework that limited starting pay for someone coming in to the sheriff's non-supervisory contract. And we had agreed to that. For years, it had always been up to public safety at the request of the sheriff. And so it had always been kind of relying on the sheriff's recommendation based on prior experience where to start them. Those caps have now hindered our ability for recruitment, and the union recognizes that. So they actually came to us requesting to restore the sheriff's ability to make determinations on a case-by-case basis, which we were very open to because that's the way it had always been. But at the same time, this represents reverting back to the original piece, but rather than referring them to public safety, it would just be controller administrator recommendation that would determine their starting salary. And for example, I believe we have a couple very experienced officer candidates that are interested in coming here, and this would potentially lead to 2 hires, is what I'm hearing. So the union has already voted and ratified this as a yes. So the motion administration would be recommending is that we move this to the full board for their determination next week. Yep.
Moved and supported, so with the understanding that we are simply moving this out of this committee. No other decision has to be made.
Yep.
All right, any comments, questions, discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposition? All right, it is carried.
Next is very similar. I won't do the same lead-in, but this was, union approached us. So we have a retirement that'll be coming up, jail captain, and sounds like that might be formalizing now. But with that, the contract, I think it was like in 1997, I think it says it right there, implemented an education requirement for 1995 for positions of the chief deputy and the captains of an associate's degree. The person that makes the most sense to take on this work, the lieutenant in the jail, currently doesn't meet this, but has years of expertise and experience. We had waived the requirement of this on the lieutenant when we bargained previously. We added an in lieu of, so if it's 2 years to get an associate's, if you have 3 years of practical experience, that we would acknowledge that in lieu of. So similarly, we did the same, but because it is captain and because it is chief deputy, and those ranks come with a lot of responsibility and necessary expertise, we added in for this group that if the sheriff chooses to allow that waiving of the associates, that they have 2 years to get a certification. In this instance, I think the sheriff for the jail captain would like a jail administrator certificate to be received within 2 years of the date of promotion. If for some reason a promotion happened, they failed to do it within that time, they'd revert back to their prior rank. But I don't foresee that ever being an issue. It's a privilege to continue to grow, and I think you'll see that the stock of people we have would rise to that. So administration is supportive of this, as is the sheriff. So we would ask similarly a motion to move this to the full board and support it.
And supported, any discussion?
Just,
Commissioner Barber?
I just wondering, would that individual, or do we provide tuition reimbursement, or is there any incentive on our end to encourage them to get further education?
It is a great question, and no. And that's part of what's been difficult is, so you have somebody who's well in their career and they're like, if you're requiring me to get an associate's, I'm gonna have to shell out, say, $15,000 or $18,000, assuming you go through a very affordable option, all the while taking that work on while I'm at home. So it's been a barrier. And some of these law enforcement certificates through like the FBI and these programs are sometimes more applicable. So that's kind of the reasoning behind moving to a training that's precise versus just a general AA degree. Yeah.
Anyone else? Okay. Seeing no more comments, we have a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
aye.
Any opposition? Motion is carried.
Then my two topics, just want you to know we have received our Blue Cross Blue Shield rates. It's a quick update. I mean, shocker, our rates did go up. We're not presenting them today. We still have to do some analysis, and we're meeting with Blue Cross and Brown, our vendor that we work with managing our benefits. So we'll bring a comprehensive outline of that, and then also recommendation under PA 152 for next month's meeting, which is where the board decides how to do cost sharing for employees. But I can tell you just the hard cap rate, which is governed by the state, did not go up much, and it's put a lot of public employers in a difficult place because private sector and public sector, I believe this is the most expensive increase year in the last 15 years, which is saying a lot because our rates went up almost 18% in the prior year. And that just has to do with America has an aging population, and the older we get, the more we rely on health professionals, which weighs on the health insurance system. So in some regards, this was inevitable based on the population pyramid we have. It's frustrating though, every year senior health insurance just continue to climb. It's frustrating for our employees because it's less money for them in raises. It's frustrating for us as employers because we want to take care of our people, but it is tough. So we'll have those discussions next month. The other is MERS, the changes that we made for adding the 5 years to the amortization schedule will either be October or November. Some of those changes can't get finalized till the $2 million payment from Delta and the $1 million from the county get put through. And then there was another $1 million that we did in a transfer within the MERS system to get Division 10, which is the administrative non-union group, to be brought into that amortization. We have a budget, we have rates, we're moving forward with those, but we will present any reduction, what that will look like, but we'll be moving forward with the rates as today. That way we're good. And those are my updates.
Any questions for Ben before we turn him loose? All right, thank you, Ben. On to our finance director, Melissa.
Good morning. So start off with our child care fund report. This is updated for the month of July. I have indicated a couple of times over the last few months that we may end up needing a budget amendment. I am happy to report that we do not need a budget amendment that's going before you this year because of the work that the courts have done to really utilize the funds that are available. So we are able to move monies between departments within the child care fund to sustain the adjustments. So I just want to make sure to point that out, and this has not substantially changed our fund balance projection for next year as well. So if there are any questions, and then I will move on to our fiscal year end projection, which is, we are exactly where we thought we would be as of right now. We do have a few budget amendments that are coming later on in this meeting, which we will discuss some changes that need to be made. But
I would just say that whenever we do this final projection, we ensure that we're conservative so that, you know, we just want you to know that this is likely going to be the best look that we would have. It may look better, but again, it falls back on employees that are not here and not filling positions, back to the backs of employees that are doing the work. So, and we will have that savings through the end of this year and then going forward.
Any questions for Melissa?
that actually concludes my reports then.
Well, thank you, Melissa. You said that with a bit of a smile on your face. All right, on to item 12, capital improvement. Good morning, Chad.
Good morning. I'll go through a few things this past month. Our project updates, we're wrapping up our 25 projects and Looking ahead to 26 stuff as far as the internal projects that we do, there's still a few that we're wrapping up. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about a couple of things that's happened just this week that our aging infrastructure it's reared its ugly head. We've had a couple of things on Tuesday, fire alarm here and evacuated the courthouse. And it was a false alarm. We have roughly 380 to 400 smoke detection devices in this building alone. And that's the white thing above your head there, Chair. I think there's 5 in this room. They're old technology, they're obsolete, and they fail. They're at end of life. So we've had a comprehensive plan of going through and changing these out. And they are roughly $400 a piece every time we change one. So if you can do that math, it adds up pretty quick, and that's just the courthouse. We have probably just as many in the jail and some of the other buildings as well. So we're trying to stay ahead of that, but every now and then we have one that fails and sets a false alarm, and obviously the whole building evacuated and a waste of everybody's time. But we're trying to keep ahead of that, but I wanted to share that. And then also at animal control, that's obviously a topic in a building that's got a lot of attention lately. Christy came in this, I think Monday morning, to find the sewage system had backed up in the kennel area. Obviously, you can imagine the mess that creates, and that happens a couple times a month. Generally, we can get it under control, but essentially there are 22 kennels. Each one of those kennels has a floor drain in it, which effectively acts as a toilet. Obviously, the animals can't use a toilet, so most of the solid waste are picked up, but a lot of it makes its way down the drains, and hair and fecal material and urine. You can imagine what those pipes look like underground. There's no basement like at a house where the pipes are exposed, so anytime there's an issue, you have to cut up the floor, and it becomes a pretty extensive project. But it's old cast iron. I think it was early 80s, 40 years old, 41 years old. It starts to fail. The drains heave up. We have to cut them out and replace them. But I just wanted to give some examples. A lot of people talk about that building and why they can't just continue operations the way they have been. That's one of the reasons. And a lot of the times, Christy can handle, cleaning that up. But then, like this week, we have to go in and jet out the pipes and make sure there's nothing broke under there. And so I just wanted to share a couple of things that kind of hinder the operations over there. And with less staffing, obviously the sheriff can speak to that, but it really puts when she's dealing with that type of thing, she's not dealing with the public or front desk or calls. So just wanted to add that. That's all I have for my capital improvement report. I know we're going to move into number 13, which is the lease agreement. I spoke last month that we're working with the controller's office on lease agreements. And with that, if Deputy Director Dawson would like to lay the groundwork, and then I can offer some context.
Absolutely. So back.
Before we move on, any questions for Chad about his report so far? Okay, go ahead, Ben.
So, back to Commissioner Barber's earlier comments. So we have a couple of leases that we do, and they're not uniform, and there's really not a lot of context about why one is the way versus the other. This is an example of a lease we have where it's actually pretty well compensated. It's $22 per square foot. I think 22 and a half, I think, when we did the final math on it, which is good. I think we did some analysis, and about 17 is kind of a commercial square footage rate for the area around Lansing. That being said, USDA did respond back and say, we know 22% is on the high end, but we're good with renewing at this. However, we now have to have a breakdown of what makes up the 22%. So we have started putting that together. They call it the shell rent. So we just have to determine, insurance, maintenance, reserves. We're going to put the admin fee, the utility breakdown, which we will have to work on, is going to have to include recognition of solar maintenance as well as the value of the solar. But we'll have to proportion it because it's a suite within that building. So we're not just going to, take the whole building's value. We're going to have to come up with something: landscaping, snow removal, general maintenance, building supplies, custodial services. In this contract, we are, because it is at 22%, we're probably not going to approach it with a nickel and diming type of a thing, because that does cover the expenditures for us to maintain the building. And that being said, we hope to have something back to you all after we can present the shell rate to USDA.
Just to add to that, that building, total building is about 25,000 square feet, 15,000 on the first floor, and then the lower level, another 10,000. USDA occupies about 3,300 square feet, so, of the first floor, they have a little bit of storage down, but 20 to 25% of the total building. They share that space with Community Mental Health and MSU Extension. So, like Ben mentioned, we would have to deviate the different leases and square footages, and that's what we've been working on. That building received some pretty substantial upgrades when we did our performance improvement back in 22, 23, energy efficient lighting and an HVAC system that was redone. So we'll take all that into consideration.
Yeah, yep. And one of the standardization things we talked about is trying to boil down to, per, say, 100 square feet, what's the custodial, what's the maintenance, so that we're not always like time docking per se. Let's time dock to get a figure of, this is reasonably what we anticipate our expenses to be to manage that. So it makes it easier to move forward with other contracts in the future too. So.
And to your point, I mean, these leases, we have several of them, and they're so messy. They're all different. We need to reel that in and have it a little more standardized, so.
Yeah, the one with the Michigan Department of Health is one we're also looking at, and again, it's just radically different. Although we did have the discussion, when you're dealing with governmental entities, you're probably going to have completely different boilerplate, because they're going to come with what their standard contract looks like. So we're navigating that.
Chad, how many separate and distinct buildings do we have on campus here that the county owns?
14.
14.
14 climate control buildings. We have a couple storage buildings that are we consider just, storage.
This is not a minor item then, is it?
Plus you add the off-site locations too, right? Then it's
Off-site locations, the landfill, a couple of radio towers that we have some generators at that require attention. So I can give you a whole list of 14 buildings, 60 acres.
All right. Any questions for Chad? All right, Chad, what else do you have?
That concludes my report. If there's any questions, I'll glad to answer.
All right. Moving on to item number 14, budget amendments.
All right, so this morning we have a laundry list of budget amendments as we wrap up our fiscal year. So the very first one is a acknowledgement that we did receive revenue from the state for the early voting. So that is additional revenue that the county received that we were not originally anticipating, but it did come with additional costs for those services. So those end up being a budget neutral increase. The next is something that we have been discussing on an ongoing basis, that our interest revenue is increased due to Treasurer Rainette's guidance. So that is actually the amount that we have received additionally in revenue, which is wonderful to see. This did end up causing additional costs for our bank service charges, but it's small in comparison. So the next piece is for the drain at large. Every year, this expense has been going up. We share these expenses with the road commission, and the road commission is paying a portion of the bill. It is not the total amount due to drains for all property owners. It is just the county's portion of what is required. So that is increasing for this fiscal year. We do not know the final cost share between the road commission and the county for this.
I did just want to say we are working on it, but the road commission is in arrears for 2 years. There's been some frustration in the old way that this list was maintained and with how when Connie took over as controller and Melissa took the task of taking on how this was managed. And we have had multiple meetings, and we typically feel like we come to an agreement, and then later it feels like we're not. So we have begun exploring that on this end. We just want to make you aware there is an obligation to pay, but there is discussions about how that looks like and is framed out. And particularly, it's the once a project's bonded and people start buying out of the drain project, the remaining balance is left to those people. So that's kind of where we're at. We're going to get through it, but we wanted to let you know that we do have a couple years that we're going to have to get collected from them.
And the amount that you have included in this budget amendment is a very conservative amount. That is, if the road commission pays only the amount that they say that they're allowed to pay, this would cover the remaining amount for the 23 assessment as well as the 24 assessment. This is worst case scenario, what the county will have to pay. My hope is that we can come to an agreement that is substantially less than this amount. However, as this is the final month for budget amendments, this needs to be before you.
Question. Commissioner Barber.
Correct me if I'm wrong. When we pass the budget, all the positions that we have on our position allocation are fully funded, correct? Okay, so my question is why haven't we seen a budget adjustment from the Sheriff's Department yet? We lost animal control officers, we've lost deputies. I've not seen a budget amendment reflecting the Sheriff's Department reduction in funds yet.
So when there is money left on the table from vacant positions, that rolls into the general fund. Generally, the only time that you would do a budget amendment for that would be if you were going to expend it elsewhere. So you would move it from the sheriff's office to fund something else. So as an example, drain, it's not a good example, but you can move that savings. Essentially, that's what you're doing when you make these budget amendments because we're taking it from fund balance carryover. But that's what we've been saying all along, that money just lapses into the general fund, which is not an ongoing lapse, right? We want to make sure. So when we start next budget year, those positions are gone. So if we fill positions right away, we won't have those lapses. But yes, you could make a budget amendment to take it from the sheriff's office, but he can't spend it anyway, so it just stays in there.
I mean, it's not so much so the sheriff doesn't have that money in which to spend. What it does is it gives transparency to our constituents that when the sheriff, I'm just using the sheriff as examples, so it's not totally directed towards him, but the loss of animal control officers, we keep on saying animal control, we don't have nobody. So if we showed a budget amendment to show the public that, hey, the sheriff no longer has these funds, I think it would go a little ways with adding some credibility to the board that, hey, those funds were there, they're not there anymore, because now, I've heard it a couple of times, the sheriff still got all this money. You're telling me he doesn't, that's fine. However, some of the public believe that he still has that money in which to do, and it's hard to explain when I can't show them proof, either in paper or in video, that, hey, this department reduced their staff by X amount, and we pulled back those funds from that.
So
That's all I'm saying.
would you want those, we would have to do that for every department.
And,
So,
I mean, that's what this board's for, right?
well, it is, but we're not utilizing the funds because they're not filling the position. The sheriff can't go and buy a piece of equipment or buy additional supplies with the savings from personnel. So he's not, he's not gonna be able to do that.
Gotcha, but your constituent out there doesn't realize that.
So, and again, budget amendment, we could try to do something like that, but Logan, if you could go back to Melissa's financial report. Okay, so within this financial report that you're seeing here, and again, I said conservative, so the savings will be greater. If you look at public safety, you'll see a $1.9 million savings. So are you saying that you would want that dollar amount of just personnel?
When we got rid of those positions, or we're using animal control, for example, right? We know he's pulled those positions, or we've pulled those positions off. They're not gonna be, we're not gonna put them out again, right? There should be in my opinion, there should be a budget amendment showing that those positions no longer exist.
So if that's fine.
But I'm just one member of the board, so,
You
but,
could do that, and we would be able to have that prepared by next Wednesday. It's just that we have to go through every structure and do that. And it will lapse anyway at September 30, because then they can't spend it. But we could do that if that's what the committee wants us to present next.
I'm saying in the future.
Oh, in the
Right.
future, every year.
Yeah, I mean, why not?
You could do something like that. I mean, it's,
I mean, if that department reduces the number of road deputies, right? Where's those funds go? That's the question.
in the general
Where's the
fund.
funds go? Well, they went in the general fund.
They're in the general fund. You can't move them out for the general fund. I understand what you're saying, but again, I will say that we didn't lose positions because the sheriff chose to. Number one, he didn't know how many were going to be cut.
Yeah.
And then with animal control, we had a vacancy, then we had the additional vacancy after both millages failed. And so why fill them when we know that we're looking at doing away with animal control as is?
But then I could toss it back at you and say, well, if we don't circle around and show the public that we're serious about this, then the next time, 4 years, 5 years, you go back to a millage, they're gonna say, well, look. It's all about credibility, right? We went to them and asked for millage twice. What did they say? You're not credible, we don't trust you, you're doing something nefarious, I don't have the services. So, what do? We counter that. That's why Logan's still got a job. And every time we have a meeting, we show transparency. That's my point, but I'm just one member.
Does somebody want us to do that for next Wednesday? I mean, is there a motion for us to, well, we've got to get through the rest of the budget amendments. And I'm going to ask you at the end of these budget amendments that Melissa's going through, that I have not fully, because of our staffing level within our own office, gone through and validated everything that Melissa has done. So I want to make sure there aren't any additional, and I can add some. So that's going to be what my request is. So we could add those.
I would say that Wednesday is too short of a suspense for you.
So you want to start this in like October when there's,
I mean, a new fiscal year, why don't we turn a leaf?
Like summary.
no, he's saying an actual budget amendment that takes that money from that department.
Just to reflect where it's going. Commissioner Art.
Let's make that 2 members of the board. Not for Wednesday, but to turn the leaf over for this coming budget period.
Well, my question would be to Melissa, is this going to add a tremendous amount of complexity to this, to what you have to do?
To today's actions, no, but for future actions, that will be something to figure out how the board wants that committed.
But the difficulty in it is this: if somebody is hired in at the entry level and has single family coverage, right? And then we end up hiring somebody who has 10 years of experience or moves from another department, they're at the top of the scale, and then they have family coverage. That expense, especially if we were able to fill it quick, and these are all dreams that I have. But if we were to do that, we utilize some of that savings for that. So we would have to calculate what the difference would be, allowing the department the maximum amount. It's a complex thing, but I totally understand what you're saying.
I would counter saying that when you go to hire somebody, you don't know if they're single or if they're married with family. So you don't budget for single, no dependents. What you budget for and what you put in that budget is, the full amount that possible. Am I correct?
Yes, depending on
Okay,
what,
so-
well, something can happen mid-year with health insurance, because we just did a budget amendment last month.
And my point is not every person that's, like, let's say we have one person go away. I'm not saying that needs to be done. I'm saying if you reduce a allocation for that department, that should be shown on the budget amendment, right? If you reduce that allocation, I'm not saying if you have a vacancy, we should show a budget amendment. I'm saying if we take your department from 10 personnel to 8 personnel for the future, then that's 2 personnel that you no longer have a budget for.
In that case, that's true, but we did not take action throughout this budget process for this year to eliminate those positions.
Yeah.
So effective October 1, those will all be gone.
Yeah.
So then if the board took action and said, we're now going to cut the sheriff by 5 positions, then yes, what you're saying is true.
And that's why I'm saying, after October
Okay.
1, we could show it.
So it's not
But-
just for vacancies, it would be for like a reduction period.
Yes.
Sheriff says, I'm not going to do anything with animal control. We're now cutting that whole budget and putting it in.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
right. Okay,
You
that's,
should, in October, I should see, if we got rid of animal control in November, okay? Because originally in the budget, the sheriff would have a portion of his funding would be allocated to animal control. And we got rid of it in November, I would see a budget amendment saying, hey, a reduction of this amount,
Yes.
we're no longer having animal control.
yes. That's because, the
Yeah.
board took action to
I'm
eliminate the
not,
position.
I'm not talking get into weeds and every time
Okay,
somebody.
that's what I was confused about, so
No.
now I get it.
No. When we reduce personnel for future use, those allocations are gone. We need to have a budget amendment to show that everybody on this board and everybody in the public that, hey, they had 20, now they got 15. That's it.
We can do that.
So this would be for any future budget amendments if in the mid-year there is a reduction in staffing levels. Okay. Thank you for the clarification.
Because right now, I mean, we're facing our budget, state budget, federal budget. This could very well happen in a very short term after October.
Correct.
We may have to reduce positions and with not future thought of filling them. So, I mean, that is a way for the public to see, like, hey, I don't want to bring up the sore subject of the planning and zoning, but
That's a good
hey,
example.
hey, we're going to do this in October. Come on, guys, we're going to do this
So-
in October.
Right, and that
So-
isn't a separate fund, so when that happens, that's what we would do, would be to close out that fund with a budget amendment.
And those personnel, you would see those personnel budget amendment coming off of out of that department, right? Then that way, it's finalized. Everybody in this board knows, everybody on the board knows, and the public can see those positions no longer exist. The budget amendment is done. It's gone. It's gone.
Okay, we understand now.
Okay. I know it's long-winded, but thank you for entertaining me.
I'm usually long-winded too, so I appreciate somebody else being that way.
All right, Melissa.
Okay, so for the next page of budget amendments, we have our special revenue funds. The very first one is, again, due to the stewardship of funding for the treasurer's office, and that's increased interest allocated to our Parks Department. And then this next item is a very substantial topic from me, from my office. About just over a year ago, we came to the board with a budget amendment request to ask for contractual services to apply for the Inflation Reduction Act funding. We were able to actually utilize a contractor and actually receive funding for this. And it has dramatically reduced the cost of the energy inefficiencies that we implemented here across the county. So that is a big, big revenue that has come in from the federal government. My desire would be to acknowledge that we are receiving that funds finally, because we didn't know for sure we were going to receive it, and that we put this in a restricted fund balance so that this can only be utilized to pay off our debt. We do not want to pay off our debt early because we are actually receiving a very favorable interest rate, and we can actually leverage those funds to earn more interest. So putting it in a separate savings account and then restricting it to only be used for future debt service will help extend both the life of that revenue and paying the payments on this program. Next item is,
Just one quick
sorry.
question. So there's been talk of the Fed cutting interest rates. I'm assuming that with this fund, if that happens and our interest stops dropping, we have that trigger of like, now it makes sense to
We can
move it to pay it off.
We can absolutely look at that, but our interest rates are locked in.
Yeah,
So
okay.
the interest rate that we're
payments.
expending
Yes.
is locked in. So if our interest rates do dramatically drop, we can have that conversation at that point. But this would be several years down the road.
Sure, okay.
And just the interest rate on that TELP is 2.58. So I think we're good for a while. But yeah, it'd be great if interest rates get that low again for people sitting on the sidelines wanting to buy homes. So, yeah.
Yeah, don't hold your breath. Melissa.
So then the next item is Community Development Block Grant Fund. That is a fund that we have had for many years, and this year we just happen to have more expenses to reimburse the MISTA excess program income because we were not able to utilize all of the program income to fund more projects. The next piece is we earned more interest revenue. So there's a theme here. More interest revenue from our American Rescue Plan Act funds, and that will go straight to the fund balance for American Rescue Plan Act funds. Next item is for our opioid settlement fund, and that actually, we had additional opioid settlements that we were not anticipating. So that includes quite a few items, but overall will just be put into the fund balance for future use.
We're going to explore this in more detail in a couple items here, so.
Correct. The final item, I will apologize, is much more complicated than I would like to present today. But when the final borrowing was done for Bank Intercounty, the closing memo included that we had to pay off all prior borrowings. Two of the prior borrowings actually were not scheduled to be paid until next fiscal year. So a budget amendment needs to be done to pay off those payments with the proceeds from borrowing to pay it off early. So it's a very substantial amount because those were paying off two very large borrowings of $4 million. So that is a big change, but it's all being paid from the proceeds of that debt, and then the remaining amount will go into the fund balance to pay for the future debt payment. It's actually written into the closing memo that we have to put it there for the first year's debt payments.
I want to note one thing. So Melissa had this dream over the last 2 weeks to separate out bank intercounty drain, which is a great idea. And we worked with the accounting firm. We could do that. It was discovered we don't even have to budget for this, but we were not going to eliminate a budget that the county has consistently budgeted for the special assessment and the debt payments. Separating out bank intercounty, and Melissa did create the funds. We're not prepared to do that today, and we're not prepared to do that for the adoption of the budget. It is something we want to look at because if you remember, we had state revenue that came in. We were utilizing a transfer from the American Rescue Plan, and we have other payments that will come in from people who are paying off their special assessments early that are after the settlement. So we will look at doing that. I just was pretty short with Melissa, like we don't have time to go through it. It's a complex moving it from one fund to another since payments have already been made out of this fund. So we're looking at that sometime mid-next year.
Any questions? So this amount, Melissa, this is the county's portion of that drain.
No, this portion is the total borrowing for those drains. So it's an accumulation of 3 separate borrowings that have already occurred. There was a $3.7 million borrowing, a $300,000 borrowing, and then a $2.282 million borrowing. All of those had interest costs associated with it, but when they were borrowed, it was under the premise that it was temporary. And then in May, there was a final borrowing that was done for $33 million to finish the project, knowing how much the project was actually going to cost after construction estimates have been finalized. So that's why it's as large as it is, but it is for all of the prior period borrowings.
And if we lived in a world where drainage districts were able to get bonds on their own and manage their own finances, this amendment wouldn't be before you. This is more of a custodial because we managed that fund on behalf, but this is all part of how they were financing that project. So this rests as the obligation of the drainage district as a whole, essentially, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So those are the budget amendments, like I mentioned before. The one thing that I would like is for me to have a final review and be able to bring to you, we can do this as a budget amendment, but then to turn around and bring something back that we would do separately that I can explain at the full board. So if we can get the approval for this and then just know that I may bring something back to you that you can consider or not consider, I just want you to know that I want the ability to do that because remember, we have to do these amendments by September 30.
Okay, any questions on that?
I was just going to make the motion to move these to the board and including future possible amendments from the administration.
It's pretty generic, but that's good. And supported? Any other discussion? All right, seeing none. All those in favor of moving it to the board, say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay, your motion has been carried. Anything else, Melissa?
No, sir.
All right. Before we venture into item number 15, I'm going to recommend we take a 15-minute recess so we can come back and not be distracted.
Thank you, Chair.
if everyone would take their seats, we will resume our meeting. And we are at item number 15, policy updates, purchasing policy, and that is in your packet. So, who's got this one?
Start with that.
Yeah, well, that's where we're picking up.
Yeah. I think this is
We all thought
the
you
spot
were.
when Logan said, "You'll see me later." I think this is what he was referencing.
Actually, this is not. But
Oh, it's not. Okay, well then.
talk if you want.
No, I can do a quick overview, but so okay, well you go. All right. Yeah, so we have been doing the work group as discussed, which is made up of Commissioner Haskell Peak, Commissioner Mott, and Chair Drosha. And this is reviewing our purchasing policy, which was last updated in 1999. So before you, you see the 1999 version, and the recommended changes that are before you are just the bare minimum to meet statutory GASB rule requirements going forward. We're still continuing the broader discussion about purchasing into the future, which includes like bidding processes and ways to prioritize things that might help us save money, potential consolidation of functions, et cetera. That will all come in the future. Today before you is, this just means that we continue in compliance with federal and accounting standards and procedures. Essentially, we moved the threshold from 2,500 to 5,000 to 5,000 to 10,000. Those are the thresholds. The other thing is we updated the reference to the controller administrator from what it was prior. We removed, I think it was the Parks Commission, which has not been in full force and effect, especially with expenditures in the parks for quite some time. And then we updated the committee names to what they currently represent today. That's largely it. And then we moved at the bottom, there was a discussion about how vehicle policy worked. We took that piece out because currently vehicles fall under this right now. So is that correct? Yep.
There's a separate vehicle policy, but we've moved in the direction of leasing and then purchasing are separate. But in the purchasing of vehicles, we have like a cooperative intergovernmental agreement. So we follow Oakland counties, we follow My Deal, and then there is a local preference policy at this point that gives like a 5% credit for those that are in the county. But we have not been purchasing vehicles other than those that are specialized and we can't do through a lease.
Any questions or comments to this? I just want to point out, for those that are watching, and we've heard it, we had a booth at the fair a year ago and got a lot of, or I won't say a lot, but we had several people come up and say that there's no transparency in the county, we have no clue what you're doing. And this is a result of some of those comments. This is this commission responding to your wishes to see us do a better job. And I think this is just one item where we can say, yeah, we heard you, and this is how we're going to respond to you. So I just wanted to bring that up. So any other comments, Commissioner Haskell?
Yeah, I'll just say that I think the first meeting was very productive too, even though this is minor changes. I think we all had a lot of similar thoughts on, supporting local businesses here in Eaton County with our purchasing policies, and I look forward to continuing the discussions.
I just would like to acknowledge Claudine Williams and Logan Bailey because they took first stab at pulling a bunch of best practices from comparable communities into a draft that is what we're starting with in this group. It's not in the packet today, obviously, but it was a big undertaking to do at the same time as everything else we've got going on. So appreciate the team that we have in the controller's office that makes it possible to make progress on so many fronts all at once while we're drowning.
I'll speak for them because they would say that they did an awful lot of work as people who are not in the financial end of it, and then it was kind of all undone. So we will apologize to both of them for the amount of work that they did, but they really did give us a framework and the ideas of what we should be doing that are comparable to other counties, municipalities. So thank you both, and I apologize.
So this is not an action item. It is?
Yeah, so the recommendation from administration would be to adopt the revised purchasing and bidding policy to take effect on October 1st, and then, oh gosh, yes, September 30. So ignore the October 1st date on the draft in front of you because I put that there. September 30.
Okay, any questions, comments? So do we have a motion to accept this policy as written?
I'll move it.
Moved and supported. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? None. All right, motion is carried. Okay, any other comments on the purchasing policy from either Ben or Logan or Claudine? Okay, all right. Moving forward to item 16, the opioid settlement update.
Yes, this is me. This one's me.
Thank you.
Yes, this is quick, just a quick update. There are no resolutions in your packet for this, but at Public Works, the controller spoke about some potential changes coming to opioid settlements. So there's no resolution in your packet, but I do have an update. There are new state of Michigan subdivision agreements for opioid settlement funds that come with new rules and requirements. In 2023, you passed a resolution authorizing the controller to sign on to any settlement agreements. We're still gathering information. We're talking to our consultant from MAC. We're gathering that information. We just wanted to flag to you, there may be an amended resolution that comes to this body. There may not need to be. We're just still kind of gathering that information. But as that was rolling in, we thought it was prudent to update you on that. We know that things are shifting and changing.
Logan, just for clarification for our public, I know there's restrictions on the use of opioid funds. Can you briefly give us a description of that?
Yeah, opioid settlement funds, those are nationwide settlements with pharmaceutical companies, with manufacturers and the like, and those funds have to be used at opioid epidemic mitigation, treatments, things of that nature. And so the Board of Commissioners with the Health Department and working with our consultant at MAC, we did a community study. We did a strategic plan to help guide where these funds, once we receive them and we disperse them out, how that works, how that functions, what are our targets. And so we can't just use these funds for anything. We're not just gonna throw them at anybody that asks right away. We wanna have a process that makes sense, figure out where the gaps in mitigation services are for this epidemic. And so these are earmarked for something very specific that legally we have to follow. We don't just get to spend these how we want.
And are we on a time frame for dispersion of these funds?
No, they'll be coming in over an 18-year period. So like you saw in that budget amendment, incremental payments that come in, some end up being adjusted, which is why we did the budget amendment. I will note one other thing that we've been discussing in our office. Opioid settlements and the amount of work that we did over the last week to try to figure out how to deal with these resolutions, talking to our national legal counsel, telling us to get with our state counsel, which we signed on to a national agreement. We did not sign on for an attorney to represent us in Michigan. The AG has handled a lot of that. So anything that comes through that the state gets, some of those funds now are going to run through the AG's office, and we're restricted to use them that way. But that's where the difficulty's coming in trying to write these resolutions. But my concern that I mentioned at Public Works and Human Services is that the prior board had given me the authority to sign on because they were coming so fast. We thought we were done. We didn't know that this new would come up. I mean, there's a whole slate of them that have come out, and we want to make sure that the board is understanding the actions, but I did sign on to these agreements. One required a vote. The other required us to sign into the settlement. I did that so we did not miss the opportunity to be in those settlements. It was just the best way to go at the time, not knowing how we needed to create the resolutions. Having said all of that, the one thing we're finding is the amount of time, and I will tell you that Claudine has spent countless hours dealing with opioid-related information, attending webinars. Logan does the same thing. They tag team it because I don't have time to sit down and do that. But one of the things that we will likely be bringing sooner rather than later is a request to hire someone, a contractor. We had a MAC individual that Logan spoke about, Amy Delinky, who did all of the front work on this when it first came out. We'd love it if Amy would be able to sign on to a separate contract. She's still at MAC. But the intricacies of being able to follow the grants and monitor how they're spending the funds to ensure that you're meeting your obligation as the board on how they're being used is really difficult for people who are not in that field, which we're not. So if we could have a contractor, we'd like to do that, so we make sure. Did I miss anything in that, Claudine? I mean, we had lengthy discussion about this and the fact that previously, I think we had talked to Chairman Mott about actually hiring Amy Delinky when her contract with MAC was up just because of the amount of work. And we want as administration, and you want to spend those monies in the most efficient and effective manner for the public, because that's the reason that you have the funds. So just so that you know. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions or comments to that? And the reference, just in the reference to MAC is Michigan Association of Counties, just so everyone's clear. Yes, Commissioner Wright.
So, with all the new additions that have come in, what so far, monies do we have to work with, like total?
Right now, I believe we have, probably after these budget amendments, $3.5 million that is sitting there. Will be going out for additional grants. Right now, we only have one grant that is active. So we'll probably renew that grant and continue, but monitoring progress. But you give these grants out, and then these agencies, or one that is within the county, they don't even have the resources in order to do the work that you need to do in some cases. So we'll probably, to be effective, we'll probably want to continue to use the funds the way that we did, but expand it. So you don't want to just hire positions to do something. You want to be able to provide a contract for people to get treatment or to have the necessary drugs to assist them with the situation. So.
When do you think Amy is done at MAC?
So I believe that she renewed a couple-year contract, was that?
I believe so.
I think she did. I mean, they recognized, MAC recognized the need that they had based on the fact that the rest of the counties in the state had that. And Amy also is looking at the fact that she could assist elsewhere, but we have not talked to her since mid-last year, I think was the last communication when we were kind of begging her to see if we could get something before we could take it to the board. So great resource, still a great resource. If you watch any of her training, it's amazing. She updates you on everything that's happening in the state. So we're very lucky to have that individual, but if we could bring in the county force for all of you, that would be really good.
The length of service for these funds, obviously, it's not unlimited, so at some point, these funds, you said 18 years?
18 years is the settlements. I think right now, the longest settlement that was agreed to was 18 years. So they pay an incremental amount to all of the counties and the state subdivisions nationally. So yeah, it goes out a long time. That's because they couldn't afford to obviously pay billions upon billions. But so the funds exist. The good thing about that I like is the fact that you didn't get this influx. We did the Meyer settlement we received, which we didn't even know. We were very lucky to get that. There were not very many in the state of Michigan who received that. That was the only influx of funds that we could have started using like right away. But the board took action to follow the same Exhibit E, is what it's called, in the settlement with the what is it? The distributors and Janssen, which were the original settlements. So, but spending the funds in each year at a short amount rather than just spending a huge amount of money and then it's gone makes sense. So those equal payments throughout those 18-year periods allows you to, continue programs or functions.
Commissioner Jane Whitaker.
We could that's kind of what we would be looking at by hiring a contractor. That's what we would be doing, is utilizing a portion of that. Now, we have to report spending. So if we're using it for any other purpose than what the intended Exhibit E is, we have to report that we're utilizing it for a contractor. So we would do that because it's not in Exhibit E, but it's allowable. So you want to keep the amount of money that you're spending for a contractor or positions to the most effective use of those funds. So we wouldn't want to spend an awful lot of money and hire 2 people to start administering programs, unless you were doing something like opening a facility for treatment, right? Has to be effective. That would be the way that you would utilize those funds differently. But right now, the expense of those funds, really it's sitting in an account. It's all allowable under Exhibit E.
Any other questions? Are any of these funds available to be allocated to and through law enforcement?
Yeah, so you can utilize the funds for jail treatment programs, residential that they would leave. I know the sheriff looked at that last year and applying for a grant, didn't end up doing that. But yes, the sheriff is looking at the availability of those funds into the future for programs. And I say this, we're not going to do it to bring back any of the positions. I'll say that right now because none of those qualify. But it would be to bring in services that impact the public in a positive way. So whether those are in the jail or something that law enforcement is doing out on the street, right? So that they can assist people.
So for clarification, right now, how the board has it set up is any money that's expended has to go through that grant process and that grant program. So yes, it's an allowable use, but they would have to apply for a grant through the system that we currently have set up.
So you're making those decisions under our strategic plan with each program that you implement. So sheriff, courts, anyone.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
So when the awards values are changing as they're coming in, because they're not all the same amount, of course, we're splitting them up so that equally they make a consistent budget for 18 years, right?
Well, the money's coming in over those 18 years by each of the settlements. So that's coming in over that period of time. But we have not allocated like an 18-year grant program or anything like that. So you would, now, if there was something, like I said, if you had, $1 million where you could open up some type of a treatment program and you could spend that over the course of the 18 years, that would be a use of those funds. We don't have anything like that set up right now.
Okay, so that's why we're going to set it up as grants based on how much we have available this year. Okay.
Yeah, so we'll be getting into that, I believe, in April, Claudine, or is that earlier than that?
I believe that was around the time frame we worked on.
Yeah. It's an awful lot of work. I know people hear me saying that, but you bring in all those funds, we didn't add staff to administer any of that. So it's a lot. I
would say this year it's going to be dependent on whether or not we can contract with somebody to when we start having those meetings and put the application out.
Which is what we had, I'll go back to our budget amendments. We had that situation in relationship to housing. We don't have anyone. We didn't have a contractor, and previously we had had staff under Claudine's supervision. But you can't get anybody. It's horrible. So you have to turn back those funds under the MSHDA rules. Same thing with opioid, it just sits in a fund, we don't have to send it back. But again, all of this stuff, if you don't have resources, just like the purchasing policy, anything else, our budget, I mean, departments are short-staffed. If they can't do something, you're not gonna see anything happen. I mean, every department that's here, those that are sitting watching would say the same thing. We can't get to anything because we don't have staff to do the things, you know, money's coming in. They can't apply for big grants. The sheriff would say that. You know, they want to do it, but then you have all of this work to apply. We don't have a grants person. We've talked about that. We have accounting for grants that's not filled right now, and Melissa's backlog is horrible. But yeah, all of this stuff is contingent on being able to have the resources to put things into force or action.
Yeah, because I was on the strategic planning with Joe and Blake, and that was going to be the problem, is not being year by year have the same amount to award. So that was kind of a issue that we
It was an issue. Yeah, it was an issue before.
Okay.
So when we first got it, if we were taking in 180,000 in a year, that's really difficult to set up programs. The benefit right now to us not having just doled out that money is that we do have a fund balance that we could allocate over a period of time. So we would have that stability for a program or a couple programs. It was when we were first getting that money in.
Okay.
So that's where the difficulty came in. You can't set up a program, that program then exceeds the cost. It goes on. So now that we have that stability, we could set something up that's better.
Okay.
Not just a one-time
That's the
use.
piece I was missing on the change.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the other piece to changes, some of the new lawsuits, you know, again, I mentioned Exhibit E because that was the big piece to the original settlements. But these new requirements are different because everybody who is having to pay out when they did the settlement, they're looking to make sure that the use of their settlement funds, they had to pay that out. If they're going to settle and not go through the whole court process, they want to make sure they're being spent the way they think they should be spent. Now, it's nothing bad. It's good ways to spend it, but they don't want governments wasting the money. Like we've said, we don't pot of money and we're not doing anything with it. So it's good, but managing that and trying to put together what they're looking at, because there was an indication of receiving medication. Now, that would only work if we were giving it to a treatment facility, but then there's a possibility for conversion into cash, that if we don't do it. But so the sheriff's office could utilize prescription medication, and they have programs right now. So they could do that. But so there's a lot of things that we have to look at. Again, a contractor to deal with that is the best. But these are really good conversations to have because, one, you need to know what you're allowed to do. You need to know, you know, what fits into the strategic plan. And then the public needs to know that you're utilizing these to the benefit of the whole purpose that we're here, the epidemic that exists.
Okay, thank you.
Logan, you had something to say?
Yeah, just real quick, for those at home or any commissioner, on our website, under departments and then community resources, you'll see substance use and misuse. And that has links to the strategic plan the county did with the health department, the community assessment in partnership with Michigan State University that we did. You can also look at the previous request for proposal application to see what, you know, structure we put in place for applicants, which could change and be updated. And a lot of this information will get updated as we get further into these settlements, but it is online for people to see.
Very good, thank you. So we have before us a resolution.
Can I add one thing? I just wanted to say too, we have an open national litigation related to insulin as well. So, you know, staff's time is also getting invested into that, which includes a lot of document prep, field research going back like the last 25 years. So again, it just keep in mind that that's running in the background.
When the email came in, I believe I may have screamed. I don't know if you guys want to say, but I may have screamed like, you cannot add one more thing to us.
That was a factual event.
Seriously, it's the list, the requirements under what the court has ordered that we have to do. So we have to go back and make sure that we don't have anything in email. That takes time for Eric Daly and his staff.
Which I haven't mentioned to
Sorry.
Eric, but hi, I'm gonna be seeing you next week.
We
you
have
know.
to do that. We have to go back to prior chairmans of this board to have communication. We need to document each of those communications because that's what the court's going to look at. And the attorneys are going to argue that you didn't go back and check, you didn't ask if they had this. We have to document each piece of it, each step, and how we contacted them. So it's a lot of work. It's great to get into that, right, to do that, because they were gouging people with insulin pricing. It was crazy, and we're self-insured as an employer, so we did have a dollar amount loss, not just premium. We had a dollar loss, so we want to do this, but holy commotion. And I apologize to everybody, but not really, because it was crazy to get that. So. And we do not have motions on this, but if we are able to put something together for the board meeting, that's what we would want to do to make sure that we meet the September 30th deadline. But right now, we've applied for everything. We would just want to solidify what any requirements under these new settlements or participation is. Again, intricate. Ben was just like, well, send it to this legal counsel. I'm like, he's not going to have any clue. This is the most complex, and it's not like you can go to the AG's office to the individual who's handling all of these, because I think there's like one, it's crazy how much work and what one person takes on. It's not like we can go to them and say, hey, can you help us with this? You know, just like a random, we need this by tomorrow, right?
So we don't have an action item. Do we need a consensus from this board?
If we need to bring it to the Board of Commissioners next Wednesday, that you're okay with that, I guess is what we would need. Don't need a motion.
Comments from anyone? I'm okay with it. All right. You have your consensus.
That was a good discussion.
All right, item B.
Oh, those were the same, sorry.
Those were the same,
Yeah,
okay.
those were the same.
Okay, no, that's fine, that's fine. So any other comments on the opioid settlement update from anyone? Okay, moving forward to item 17, miscellaneous.
So the first up is what the DNR Trust Fund application, and Ethan is here to discuss that from Parks Director, to go over why we need to do this resolution, so.
So can I just add
Yeah,
real
go
quick?
for it.
I just want to give you a little bit of history on it. You and I didn't talk, so I don't know what you have prepared. But so in March of 2025, this board passed a resolution to apply to the Michigan Trust Fund for property that we would like to purchase that is next to Lincoln Brick. We've been calling it the Lincoln Brick Expansion Project. We would like to make some changes to that resolution for a few different reasons. So Ethan is our interim director of our Parks Department, so I'll let him take it away, and then if we need to make any clarifications, we can.
Yeah, so last week, what prompted this, we got our preliminary score back for this grant. We now have a quick turnaround time to make any changes to the grant in order to score a little bit higher, and that we need all of that done by September 30th. So we're coming to you with this resolution now, so you can send it to the Board of Commissioners next Wednesday, and hopefully we can score a few more points. So initially, when we first asked for this resolution, it was for a 25% match for the grant, which would have been around $74,400 for a total cost of $297,600 project cost. We would like to move forward and go up to 26%. By doing that, it'll only be a $3,000 difference in the amount of money that we would pay out of pocket for the project, and it would help us score 10 more points on the grant. So doing that would bring our cost to $77,400. Any questions? Yes.
So the original resolution only had the purchase price of the property, because we did the resolution before the grant application. When we started working on the grant application, we were like, oh, wow, you mean we can take eligible project costs too and pay for like a survey or appraisal or anything like that? So that's why it's the total project cost now that's on the resolution before you instead of just the purchase price cost. So raising it to 26% from 25 and then including that total project cost in there is the purpose of the resolution that's before you.
All right, any questions? Well, let's get into this resolution. Do we have a motion to approve this? Okay. Okay. Do we have support? All right, moved and supported now. Discussion. Any questions, comments, concerns? Commissioner Haskell.
This might be a very naive question, but 10 points on a scale of, like, how?
So the scale is out of 500.
Okay.
And so 10 points may not seem like that much, but in the past, you know, DNR trust fund grants could be approved if someone gets 200 out of the 500. So that, even if that small amount will help. Our score was 370, which is pretty good considering the amount of people that apply around the state and what the property we're asking to acquire offers, so.
And projects vary per year. So 370 could be like an awesome score one year, but the next year not so much because of all the other projects that are applied for. Like Ethan said, 370 is a decent score. But if we move to 26% instead of 25, 380 would obviously be better.
Yep. And there's no telling where the DNR might, like, what the cutoff score would be. So like Claudian said, if we are in a group of people that are all at, 380 and we're just a few points lower, we might not get.
That was going to be my next question, is if the DNR ever gave you like a weather report on how good 370 was looking this year, or no? Okay, understood.
Other than it's a decent score.
Yeah.
We do have a conference call set up with them.
Yeah, next Thursday
with
we
the
will be
DNR.
meeting with the DNR to kind of go over other questions that we have about how we can make our grant proposal.
We're in what's called the supplemental phase, and during that time is our opportunity to firm up our application and add anything or dispute, so to say, of a score that was given to us. Like, for example, we didn't get as many points as what we thought on like a natural waterway or path type question. Well, that Lincoln Brick Park's on the Grand River, so by extension, the expansion would be on the river as well. So we want to talk to them about maybe getting more points for that category, for example.
Yeah, I'm in favor of this, but I just want to reiterate again, I think other commissioners have already said, but again, not out of general funds, it's out of Parks Millage.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Now, question, Ethan, if we could get the road commission to pave Tallman Road, would that add to our point score overall?
No, it would not.
It would not. That's
It
unfortunate.
would not.
It's unfortunate.
Road paving was not a factor in our.
It's not an eligible request.
Okay, well, I won't call Matt then. Any other questions, comments? None. Okay, so you need us to move this along?
Yep.
All right, we've moved and supported. Any other comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you, Ethan.
Awesome, thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Now, resolution opposing House of Representatives fiscal year 26 budget cuts to county revenue sharing.
So if you recall, at Public Safety, I had been receiving, you all had been receiving from MAC, call and oppose the fact that they're cutting revenue sharing. So now MAC is asking us to formalize it into a resolution as we get closer so that these cuts are not so harmful. And again, county revenue sharing is not protected as it is for cities, villages, and townships. So this is extremely important to us. If you remember, we're recovering from way back when we were not getting increases. We had to create a revenue sharing trust fund with our tax revenue that came in but went to the state, didn't come to us, and then they were doling out that money each year based on their formula. So this is extremely important. So that's why the resolution came from MAC, and Chairman Mott and I discussed it, I think it was via email, the importance of doing this as a full board right now.
Yep, okay.
So if we can move that.
Do we have a motion?
Support.
Moved and supported, okay. Any discussion on this item? Yes, Commissioner Haskell.
I think last we talked about, with the House budget as it was looking, it would be a 500,000?
It's about a 500,000 based on what they had calculated in their chart. They had put us back to like the 2023 amount.
And has there been any changes to that number for us now?
No, there's obviously discussion. Everybody's hearing one thing, hearing something different. So no, we don't have any other information. But that's a big cut to the county,
Sure.
to every other county, and yeah.
Any other comment? Well, I'll withdraw my angry comment, but anyway, this bothers me to no end, the way our tax structure is in the state of Michigan. But anyway, moving forward. No other questions, comments? Okay, all those in favor of supporting this resolution, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? All right, thank you, everyone. Let's hope these letters are effective.
I had one more thing under miscellaneous.
Okay,
We can talk about, I mentioned that I wanted to talk a little bit about the state not adopting a budget before September 30. Obviously, all over the news, big impact for all local units of government and the state of Michigan. But when asked what that means for the county, it's a really difficult topic, right? Because we need to know what divisions of the state will shut down. So they'll leave some open that are mandated, right? We don't know what the serviceable level is. So the largest concern that I could say right off the bat would be any state revenue or federal revenue that passes through the state, we could end up not getting. So if they're shut down for a month, then they're gonna get backlogged. Let's say we're 3 months out for getting any of those payments. So there's a potential cash flow issue. So Treasurer Raynette had received stuff through his association. Obviously, they're concerned about it. MAC's concerned about it. So at this point in analyzing short-term cash flow, there's not an issue right now. But let's look at it. We hold funding for medical care as far as if the medical care were to be short. I think Martha Richard had said that they had a $1.3 million cash balance at I think it was this month's meeting. But all of this revenue, we're talking federal revenue, Medicaid revenue, anything to do with the state, if they pull that back, then if they have a cash flow issue, we're back to where we were last year, where the county we hold the cash. The revenue comes into the county, we disperse it out as required under law. Who's going to handle that now, right? I mean, are we going to come up with another $2 million if they're backlogged? And they've been backlogged over the last few years from getting Medicaid reimbursements and other reimbursements that, 3 months behind, a year behind. During COVID, they were way behind. So there's an impact. Any state grants that we have, one other year that we had a shutdown back in 2008, we had to consider, are we going to run these grant programs for the period of duration of the shutdown? And at that time, it was, we'll utilize fund balance up to, I believe it was three months. So that's a decision the board would have to make. We get the shutdown in October, you're gonna have to start looking at these decisions and making recommendations and potentially utilizing budget savings elsewhere to continue to fund programs so that you're not displacing or laying off people and ending a program that impacts a participant in those programs. Non-mandated services, I mentioned planning and zoning earlier. You have a shutdown, you shut down all non-mandated. You, not to scare employees, but this is what the state's gonna look at. They're going to lay off people. They're gonna lay them off until they have a budget. So it could be, it's likely going to be 30 days. Realistically, based on what you're seeing and the difficulty that they're coming having coming together. You're not looking at a, one-day shutdown like we've seen before in the federal government and then everything's okay. You're probably looking at 30 days. But anytime that it goes into a month, it's something we should all be concerned about because there's also the chance that they withhold that funding and not go back retroactive. So they could say that, yes, you applied for this grant, but we're going to withhold that funding and not be able to go retroactive because we had to use that. Again, back to the point that you're not going to appropriate those funds as a budgetary cut into the future. And they can do that, right? So those are the things that we'll have to look at. It could be very traumatic. At this point, I can't say that I would be worried about a 30-day shutdown unless they're not going to reimburse us for that month when we're ready for 12 months worth of reimbursements. But if it goes on longer, if there's that kind of a stronghold, that's harmful and we will have to get right back to making decisions. And your budget will have rolled over, so you'll have the use of fund balance and not the savings that, we're talking about. Commissioner Barber had mentioned, because we might have vacant positions, but we won't have a position we eliminate unless you make that action. Then we would use use those funds for something that's mandated. So a lot of decisions we would have to make. I love to say that sitting in my office, we plan and plan. The more that we try to look at it, the better off we are, because then that means we did a bunch of work for nothing. If you plan for it, then, nothing will happen. So we are doing that, and we're asking questions and trying to get, where we're going to be. But a lot of uncertainties because you don't know what they're going to do at the state level and what they're going to shut down.
Thank you, Connie. Any other comments?
So,
Right.
Connie, about our juvenile justice millage, 75% of what we use to initiate those programs and have them ongoing, that would be a huge interruption in payment.
So what they could do at the state level when we talk about it, they could cut a program and say, we're not going to fund this program any longer. We used to have community-based treatment, day treatment. They could say, you're not going to be eligible for those reimbursements. But they have to fund the abuse neglect, the cases that kids that are in foster care, the monies that Melissa talked about earlier that are statewide payments that we have to make. We don't have control over what the costs are, so they'll have to continue that. Staffing, we have budgeted, but we're working on a fund balance, right? So we didn't appropriate funds for October 1 out of the general fund into that child care fund. So yes, those are things that you would have to look at. Not taking, it's miserable if something like that happens. I'd like to think that they wouldn't go in that direction to make cuts to something that is juvenile justice, just juvenile in general. That has a huge impact on, the county and community, right? So, yeah, I'd like to think they wouldn't do that. But yeah, you're at risk for anything that they decide they're not going to do.
Thanks.
Any other questions, comments? I would encourage, okay, go ahead, Commissioner Whitaker.
So what's going to happen? I know we'll probably see each other before then, but if the government shuts down, what will we have to do immediately? Will we take care of the board and decide things?
No, because not to disparage the state and the process. They're going to work right up to September 30, and if they have a meeting and then they can't reach some type of a resolution to adopt a budget, they're not even going to know what they're going to do. Their directors in all of their divisions are planning for a shutdown. So then we'll get the notification of what those will be, but it will not be that quick, right? It's just not going to be that quick. So we would be able to deal with this within the first committee meeting at Ways and Means, and then any other, if it's Public Works and Human Services, if we have to make a drastic change right then we would do that. But yeah. Oh, like I was saying, there would be. So yeah, if we knew on September 30 that they were gonna cut and we were gonna lose for certain, you know, $1 million, then yeah, I'd be on the phone with Jim, like, call a meeting right now. Board has to call a meeting because we'll never be able to deal with a cut. So, yeah, we would look at that. I just don't envision that happening.
Anyone else? I would just like to mention that for all the emails and phone calls and texts that we as commissioners received over our budget, that you multiply that by 10 and start calling your state legislators and let them know we can't afford to have this happen. Eaton County cannot afford to have a state shutdown for any reason, and there's no reason to shut down the state. So that's not a political statement, that's a pragmatic statement. All right, moving on to item number 18. We have bills to pay. Very good. And we have support, very good. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? We have paid our bills. And item 19, 2025-26 budget and winter tax rates.
So the budget amendment before you has to go to the board. It's the Appropriation Act from the county. So we're required, everything that's in this resolution, we're required to provide so that the public, you know exactly what we're doing. So if you go down to, what is that, item, no, sorry, go back up. What we put forth to go to the board, the L4026, that equalization report that shows our tax rates, those must be listed in the resolution. So we have had Headley millage reductions on all of those. So they're listed that this is the maximum amount that you can levy from the taxpayers. So that is set right here. The July 1st levy will be set in June. You will do that separately. But it is noted in here that you're required to do that. The max that we would be able to do for that, as it stands today, is 5.2023. So we had a rollback. We were at 5.2096. So again, a rollback, but that would be the max that you would be able to levy. Okay, if you go down, it mentions here too that we, because they're not within our funds, E-Tran, there was a millage that was levied for E-Tran, so that's why that's a separate line. And then the one thing that we've been talking about in our office, and change it or not change it, I'm fine with it, but when we searched in many other communities with the amendments to increase a salary or a capital outlay activity, we have allowed, excuse me, the controller to do that as long as it was under 2,500. We made the adjustment to the 5,000 in conjunction with what we were looking at with the purchasing policy. I can tell you that something like this generally doesn't happen, and it really isn't going to happen with all the vacancies because we're not going to be able to fill them, but it goes back to Commissioner Barber's point, the $2,500 to an overall department for salaries probably isn't going to happen, but let's say that you had a department where and the sheriff's department would be the best example for overtime. It could happen in central dispatch as well. If there's some kind of a crisis and we're full staff but overtime comes up, that can make your salaries go over budget. 5,000 doesn't do much for that, but that's what it would allow me to do to keep things running. And you would note that because we would still note that in any future meetings. The same was true for a fund, 5,000 for a fund. So if we had a fund, central dispatch is not a good fund, but a small fund, and we knew that we had a payment that came in that was $4,000 and we needed to keep that operation running, it gives me the authority rather than the 2,500. It gives me 5,000 that I can take from the general contingency fund or like savings in my office for a position vacancy to move it to make sure that we have funding continuing in that fund. That's what those are. The position allocation list, this is where you're actually allocating what departments have within their budgets. So you allocate positions, you allocate the funding. So it's twofold, that you can reduce funding and you can reduce a position. So it's two pieces to that. You could tell me, we're going to reduce your funding for 6 months due to a state shutdown, so we can preserve 6 months worth of salary and tell me not to fill a position, or you can just eliminate a position. That's what the position allocation is, and you can see vacancies that occur during the budget year have to be authorized by Ways and Means, which is what we've done and Ben does during his report. I'm trying to go through some of this because some of you have not dealt with this in the past, so that you understand what the requirements are under the Uniform Accounting and Budgeting Act. So we talk about expenditures, they can be changed. That's why you get budget amendments every month from us if we have them. And then it talks about layoffs. It talks about increasing or decreasing other portions of the budget. And it says that everyone has to abide by these rules. So it's adhering everyone to abide by whatever this board says because you have the authority and the budget, the ownership of the budget. Salary scales for elected officials and their appointed chiefs have to be approved separately by the board. So that is included here. And then we adopt activity appropriations. So sheriff, best example again, used to have Delta Township County and the jail. But his activities, you can move between something that happens in the jail that he needs an expense from county. So we can move that, it's within the activity versus adopting a line item budget, which is, we used to do, and it's very restrictive as to how you spend money and have to move the money. I say restrictive because emergencies occur, and right now, we don't have an emergency purchasing policy. So that, this is the model that we've used for what, the last 10 years, I believe. It might have gone back a little longer than that, to do by activity, which is what most organizations do, counties do. Next, the very last one on that page is that all departments, elected officials have to abide by all the policies. That talks about the operation of the courts, pick on them. It's reimbursement, contingent on reimbursement by the state of Michigan. In that case right now, the county funds it. We do not bring in a lot of revenue based on fees, court costs, because there was a lawsuit. I could go on about that. State is currently looking at and passing trial court funding. They passed a model. We did a lot of reporting. The court and my office did a ton of reporting, and they'll come back with their final model. I know that Chief Judge Cunningham attended a conference and was going to bring back additional information. But that's important because the county appropriates money to the court, but we have to make sure that they still follow the county policies with the funding, that even though they're getting the funding from the court. Let's see. Goes back to every other policy that we must follow, personnel policy, collective bargaining agreements. And then the very last one allows us to transfer money into a fund that is going to go into a negative fund balance. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said about 5,000. We are upping it from 25 to 40. And again, I mean, we can live another year if there's a concern with that. But if the budget amendments that Melissa and I proposed, and I'm going to come back and potentially propose more for next Wednesday, that's what we're looking at. So if we found out landfill, let's use landfill as an example. If something happened with the landfill and we had to have additional samples taken, we budget for what our general expenses are. If we ended up with a bill that came in next week that we didn't know about, something that came up, $30,000, I would want to be able to take that from the general fund because we cannot let a fund go into a negative fund balance. So that's what that's for. And that's a common practice with all entities as well. Okay, move on to the next. Do you have questions on the resolution so far? Okay. Okay, so this is the summary of the general appropriation for the county. As you can see, it lists out all of the revenues, and it gives us a total revenue listed here of 40.763. You see the fund balance carryover. And again, we said this, I was very proud of this because of all the work that the board has done. That fund balance carryover being in the negative means that your revenues are over your expenditures by $2 million. So that's the cuts that you made, the change to the fund balance policy, which that lapse of the fund balance, or the addition of the fund balance, goes into that fund balance policy and retaining a dollar amount, 10% amount, and then additional changes that we'll use on how you have to utilize those funds going into our unfunded liability. We said we'd bring a policy back, but that's a good thing. So when you see that negative, that's a good thing. And then the expenditures, again, those are the changes that you made for cuts. Most notably here would be public safety. So you dropped $8 million in public safety because that went strictly to a special revenue fund that is 100% funded by Delta Township. So that's why you see that. So that's the most notable cut if you go back and look at last year's compared to this year. And then there are obviously multiple other cuts that you made. And again, cuts for sustainability, not for just a one-time use. It's for sustainability to manage the county into years. I mean, I don't want to look at 5 years. I don't want this board to look at 5 years. I want you to look at 10 years. So any monetary savings that we have from position vacancies, you should be utilizing that fund balance to reduce future costs. So use of fund balance for those unfunded legacy costs that we've forced to deal with. So next page. This goes into our special revenue funds. These are funds that receive more than 50% of their revenue from another source. Again, Delta Township Police Services, that's $8.5 million. That is within that special revenue fund. That's not what Delta pays, not the 8.5, but that's what's in the fund because we allocate that 15%, transfers out from there. That's why it shows up as 8.5. Trying to see if there's any child care fund. You'll see that the funding there is $7.3 million. Again, if we were to receive any kind of cuts to programs, that would go down on a state shutdown. Central dispatch is funded. You have a surcharge, and then you have your general millage fund as well. Go down. So this is the debt service funds. Building authority for the jail. When the jail expansion was done, that comes off the books. It will be fully paid off in 2026. The millage as well will be ending. No more revenues coming in. We will have a fund balance within the jail millage that will continue some of the positions and any expenses going forward, but that will be done. The capital improvement bonds were newly issued bonds that we created so that we are able to do improvements to our building to deal with what Chad was telling you today about infrastructure that's failing or going to fail if we don't take action. And again, that's what the public told you, that their expectations were. Should have been doing it for years. Brookfield debt, this is where because a community couldn't bond, or we were able to bond at a lesser rate, full faith and credit. So we have that debt, but they pay us with a local unit contribution. But you still are obligated to make that payment. But Brookfield will be done next year as well. This is the final payment.
Final payment. This is representative of that.
And then the dental clinic, this is that debt payment is funded 100% by the lease that we have, which is an extremely complicated lease that the county has because it runs through the health department and the dental clinic. Complex thing that our auditors loved when GASB rules were implemented to try to digest how that needed to be treated, and then drain debt service. So the $11 million that's listed here, when Melissa and I were going through it, mind you, it is in money that comes in and money that goes out. So this is not any county funds, nothing here. There's no transfer from the general fund. This is strictly money that comes in on assessments or proceeds for any new borrowing. When Melissa went through it, she tried to make sure that rather than putting an $8 million budget together, that she factored in, we know there's another drain, hate to say it, but there's another drain that will come out next year. So she factored that in so that we have that budget established and aren't coming back again. But that will only come into play if the board pledges its full faith and credit, which again is good for a community. Any questions on any of that?
Commissioner Wright.
So, I know that the dental office is paying for itself based on the lease, but how much longer is it until it's actually paid for? It was like $750,000 to build that facility?
Yeah, so the debt payment comes off, I believe, again, this is a short, it's gonna come off. That's when we're gonna have to come back to the board and, that's still the county's building.
Right.
That they've been paying it, so you would still have to have a lease with them. But I can't remember if the debt comes off in 27. Tony, she's
Okay.
looking, Melissa's looking.
That would be
Longer.
20 years.
The final debt payment will be paid in December of 2028.
That was short, so yeah. And it'll be paid off. That lease, again, is set to just pay the debt. There's, I think, a residual fund balance there, not much. And if, in the event that we were running short, we have to come back to the board for some reason, something changed, which it shouldn't because the lease payments are set. Then we would have to come back to the board and address that. So this is not causing any harm again to the general fund.
So Connie, once that debt's paid for, then, and we own the building free, then again, that would be the same as like the 551 building that we own, but it
Lease
becomes
out,
a
yes.
revenue source.
Correct.
Okay, just checking.
Next page. Oh, you got it. Okay, so this is the position allocation list. First page, commissioners, you cannot reduce that. So, move on. This lists all of the positions. This does not show the cuts that were made. We did show that previous meetings, but this shows every position that's allocated to a department. If you go down to the very end, you will note that we are at 389 positions. We're down from 418 positions. So, general fund positions are 218, and special revenue, which are all of the ones that are funded more than 50%, 171. So that number's gotten closer because you cut so many of the general fund positions. Are there any questions on that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Commissioner Holmes.
Yeah, backing up the first one about the commissioners, yeah, the one comment, and I heard back in the August 8th meeting that commissioners can't be changed. Is that applied just salary, or is that including per diem and mileage?
We did not get an official opinion, but I believe the per diem can be modified within the resolution that you do in December. So you could modify the amount of per diem and mileage of the allowance for mileage that is currently in there. But you can't reduce the salary over this 4-year term.
So that'd be in the December.
You could do that at any time. It would just be an amendment to the current resolutions that you have. So you could put it into effect October 1 if that's what you're asking. But
Yeah.
you can do it in December as well.
I'm ready to do it today, at whatever point it comes up.
Okay. So when we get to, when we get to where we were at the budget hearing to where we are today, then any adjustments that you would make here, we would then propose to the full board, right? Because the Ways and Means presents the final budget to the board for adoption. So you can make changes here today that we would then implement for next week. So can we move on to the next?
Do you have a resolution, Commissioner Holmes?
I don't know if you call it a resolution or a amendment to the budget. Yes, I do.
now?
It's up to Commissioner Holmes, I guess.
My proposal amendment is to reduce per diem from $50 to $40 per meeting. Would be a reduction of the per diem account by 20%, which amounts to $12,924. Also remove taxable mileage reimbursement is a reduction of $7,000, totals up to $19,924. And I move that amendment.
Or
It's been moved and supported. Any discussion? Commissioner Haskell.
Can you repeat what the mileage change was?
The mileage amount was $7,000 for the taxable, which be, to me, it's referred to as commuting miles from your house to your workplace. Other miles are still not included in that. But
So to go off-site, so if you go to a MAC meeting or a committee meeting that you're on, that's non-taxable. But you have the ability to tax revenue or tax to attend meetings here at the county complex. So that's what he's referring to. He just is looking at the taxable, so that the meeting mileage to and from, you can't get. That's what it is.
it'd be the column on a voucher, the first, not the very
It's
last
like
column. but-
completely eliminating it, not lowering the,
That's,
okay.
Yeah.
Anything else? No, okay. So everyone understands what he's asking for?
So $10 reduction in per diem and no mileage is what I'm hearing.
you'd have mileage for external meetings that you go to, but nothing for coming to the board or for committee meetings. Because you're eligible for that now.
So like the tri-county planning that.
You get the
Commissioner Haynes
mileage
met
for
with,
that.
okay.
Correct.
I mean, I honestly haven't, since the last public safety millages failed, I haven't filled out a per diem since then, because it just felt like, considering the budget discussions we had been having, that it just didn't seem something that I felt was necessary for me. But I have also just kind of kept it to myself, because I didn't feel like it was something I could pressure other commissioners into doing. I can understand why many other commissioners might want to oppose this. You know, I think the last time we talked wages for commissioners, it was 1987, right? Was the last
Well-
time our wages were set?
We actually reduced it in 2008.
So 2008. So we reduced from a 1987, you know, in 2008. You know, I have always tried to encourage people that, you know, come from, you know, that have day jobs and working, you know, maybe are tighter on budgets to become commissioners. Like, I think those are the opinions that we miss from the board when you only have people that don't, you know, need the money. And I do worry that maybe this is signaling a step in the wrong direction from that. I can afford it, so I will be supporting Commissioner Holmes, but I don't think we should disparage any commissioners that would vote against this either.
Commissioner Mott.
Commissioner Holmes, can you explain, just for everyone, why you are supporting it, or you're putting this proposal forward?
Well, as we went through these budget discussions from way back whenever, I see on all the departments, some are here today, that cut a lot in, how do you say, experiencing difficulty in there. And so far, I hadn't seen any time that the commissioners, how do you say, put skin in the game for a reduction or a more challenge to help with the budget process here.
Any other questions or comments?
I think we put skin in the game back in 2008.
Yeah, Commissioner Barber.
5% more than what you're getting right now. That was the reduction that was made, was 5%. Yeah.
And I could just add, we had a compensation survey in 2025 that came through that we filled out and asked to get it sent back to us just for commissioners. But of the 16 communities that were included on that, we were third from the bottom. The only two communities that paid commissioners less than us was Isabella County, which just went through huge budget cuts like we did, and Ionia County. So I will just say, just know we're already kind of bottom of the pack for what it's worth.
Commissioner Barber.
It depends on how you look at that scale. So, we were in third place. With this motion, we may be in first place. So it just depends on how you look at it. If you turn the paper this way, we're third from the bottom. You turn it this way, we're only in third spot. So we're always striving to be first.
I will also add that this would reduce the per diems only, and that did get increased in recent years. So it was at $35 per meeting up until the last, 2022 was when it was reviewed, I believe. So that actually did get increased in the last 5 years to reflect the new $50 per diem. So it is still above what it was back in '08, even if we do amend it down to $40 per meeting.
Commissioner Holmes, you had your hand up.
She just took my point, and it was the end of 2022, that board, before the new board in 2023, raised it from 35 to 50.
Anyone else? All right, we have a motion on the floor. How does everybody feel about this? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Aye. Okay. All right, should we have a roll call vote for clarification? Okay, all right. Well, passed. Thank you,
So
Commissioner.
we will do that. I mean, we can reduce the budget, put it on a reconciling line, but we would do that via a resolution. So it's the commissioner compensation resolution that we would bring next Wednesday.
Okay.
That's why we didn't put the agenda out yet, Claudine.
Exactly.
Uh-huh.
All righty.
All right.
We have completed item 19.
Oh, no, we're still
we're not?
on. Page down. Okay, so this was the reconciliation of the changes that were made. You saw this at the last few meetings that we've had. You can move, keep going. This is the elected official appointed salary scale, their appointed chief. This shows the salary that you will be approving for October 1 for the elected officials. I talked about this kind of at length. I believe it was last month or at one of the last full board meetings. This salary represents the same exact salary that you're approving in a salary scale that included the 5% pay increase for all employees and the union contracts as well. So the way that this was adopted was in 2014, and prior to that, it was the same way. We have a salary study that was done in '04, and then another one in 2014, that kept elected officials on a scale. So you don't visit this each year with some random number that an elected official comes back, and I get them every week, it seems like, you know, where is this elected official at on the scale, because they're going to the board asking for an additional 10,000 or whatever. So they're doing comparables. So this keeps them on the salary scale that was assessed by a consultant that used comparables throughout the state of Michigan. Some of these are actually below the dollar amount. Some of them are okay. Changes all the time. So this is not, it's not a radical increase. It's just the 5% that is in the current scale. So that would be the other thing that you'd approve. Go down. This is the salary scale. So this shows the new rates for the general non-union employees. You already approved the scales for all of the unions, with the exception of the one that we will be going to mediation with, which is the command or the supervisory sheriff. Okay, go on. This is where we get into the budget again. I went through, I think, everything with you in reductions that we made. This just matches what we did with respect to the Appropriation Act. So it details all of the general fund. You can go all the way through it. It details the entire budget. And we can answer questions if commissioners want to look at everything that we have done thus far and bring questions next Wednesday. Then we would go through it in detail there before the board makes a decision to adopt or amend. Commissioner Barber had a question.
Who has a question?
Commissioner Barber.
Oh, Commissioner Barber.
Oh, well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to go back to elected official salaries, please. They're on the scale. What would be, if we pulled them off the scale? Well, one, can we pull them off the scale? And two, if we pulled them off the scale, could we establish some guidelines in which those individuals have to meet that isn't on the board's whim, but that is laid out in their statutory requirements?
Well, I would want to make sure that we had a legal opinion before we did something like that. But realistically, what you would do, and this would probably be something you could do, you'd have to set the salary where it was last year because that was the beginning of there. You couldn't go below that, but you could set it at that level and say that if such and such happens, that you get an additional $5,000 once you meet some requirement. I don't know what requirements you'd be looking for, but that's one of the things that you could do.
Because currently, right, we basically have to approve or disapprove on a slate, right? All of them or none of them?
No, you can do anything within this. Can't go again below the 5%.
What I'm saying
but
is you could say.
You could individually do that.
Prosecutor could get one, but the clerk can't.
You could do that. That's what
Oh,
other
okay.
municipalities do.
Okay.
When that's why we had them on the scale, so we were doing them this
Okay.
way. But no, you can do that however you choose.
Oh, okay, okay. That was just my question. I'm not making a motion just yet.
Any questions?
So what we need is for this committee to make the recommendation for the board to adopt this budget with the amendment made by Commissioner Holmes. Oh, sorry. Go up or down. Okay, sorry. The change from the public hearing, we made a change to the, if you remember, it was at 4.5%. That was in the budget at the last Ways and Means Committee meeting. When we settled the union contracts, those went to 5%. So this represents a 0.5% pay increase for employees. That's the $96,000 that you're looking at. And then we had personnel changes, turnover, that ended up reducing the amount of personnel costs. So we always try to represent that. So those are the only changes that were made. And then the fund balance carryover, because at the last meeting you saw revenues over expenses, but to adopt a balanced budget, that's why the 1.9 million is separated there. Thank you, Melissa. Any questions? So then you would be moving this to the full board for their consideration with the amendment of the per diem and taxable.
I'm sure it'll be open for discussion at that time also.
Yeah, since this body adopted it, what I will do a reconciliation at the budget to make that change. And then, but we will still have a separate resolution that would codify that.
Okay, so do we have a motion to move this forward? Okay. Moved. Any support? All right, moved and supported. Any further discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Okay. Anything else, Connie?
No, I've
Oh,
done
yes.
enough today.
All right. We're on to item 20, limited public comment. Is there any comment from the public? Seeing no movement towards the podium, Chairman Mott is asked to make a statement prior to our adjournment, so I'll turn it over to Chairman Mott.
Come on. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to make a correction I made to, I believe it was a statement I made at Channel 6 regarding the 4-H, and I think maybe that's what Bill was referring to. When I grew up, 4-H and the fair were synonymous. You were a 4-H kid. You went to the 4-H fair. I mean, when you said 4-H, it was the fair. So when I was getting asked questions by 47 and 6, and they're trying to understand how it all works, I made the statement that 4-H isn't going anywhere. Well, I meant to say, in my head, was that the fair is not going anywhere. So I think that's where the confusion came in. So I want to apologize to you, Bill, if that's caused any problems. But I did get some phone calls. I think some other commissioners got some phone calls as well because of that statement. So one of the things I try to do, and I don't want to do, is make mistakes when I'm talking to the media. But out of those phone calls, I learned some things, and I made some phone calls myself for conversations with board members of the fair, leaders, club leaders. So the history, if I'm got anything wrong, correct me, but when I grew up, it was the 4-H fair, and we had the clover leaf, and I believe in the mid-'90s, well, 1995, somewhere around there was a split, had a divorce, I guess so. Then the fair became what they labeled as a county youth fair, and so we can no longer use the clover leaf or anything, 4-H related. It just had to be called the youth fair. So that is where the confusion came in, and I know there's still confusion by the public, because when you mention 4-H, it's the fair. And I know Commissioner Drosh and I had a conversation. He was of the same thought process. But in those conversations I had with people at the fair, they have some problems with the MSU extension. They feel like they're not being represented, and one of the conversations that came up that I didn't realize is that there's money that the extension has, roughly about $30,000, that the youth raised through fundraisers, and that's supposed to go back to the kids through, I believe, educational purposes. And if you allow Bill to get up, Mr. Chair, you can kind of respond to some of these, because I have questions. So I'm curious. I'm curious about the $30,000 and what's going to happen to those funds. I guess I want a kind of a history of how that fund came about, how long it's been there, what's going to happen to those funds if the MSU extension does not exist.
Well, first of all, thank you for your clarification in regard to your comments. I appreciate that. Second of all, I preface any answers I give you with, they're coming from the top of my head, and I'm gonna have to do some research to get specifics, but I'm not aware of any $30,000 account. Now, there may be some misunderstanding that may be, and the 4-H Clover has been at fair all along up till this last year at the sale, and a lot of these issues that there's complaints is in regard to the livestock sales.
Okay.
And so there's been traditionally livestock committees, and those livestock committees have been made up of both youth and adults. They raise funds, the youth sell at the auction, their projects are sold, and then there's a commission that is taken from whoever's running that sale, and there's a small commission that goes back to benefit that livestock committee, which ultimately benefits the youth, and it has to do that way. Those funds can only be used for those 4-H youth and the purposes for their programs to the intent and with the instruction and guide of the 4-H financial guidelines. What happens many times, and this is where there's a tug with fairs, is, hey, we need a new corral put up, or we need a new building made. Can we use some of those funds from the livestock committee? After all, your youth use those facilities. Well, that would be okay if when someone's giving to a 4-H youth, it said on the placard, it says, we're raising funds in order to be able to contribute to the fair to fix this item or that item. That's done all the time, but that's where a lot of the conflict arises, it seems. We've had a conflict in Ingham County very similarly to that. And so, like you said, there's a lot of misunderstandings that go from that, but there's no money that MSU Extension is holding on to for the youth that's not going to be used for the youth. Every last penny is going to be used for the youth. There may be dollars that are not able to be used for certain purposes because it violates the guidelines, but that's upholding the integrity of the 4-H program.
Okay. So when you say youth, you're referring to the fair, correct? The youth that
No.
show people the fair, as opposed to 4-H youth? Because
I'm
there
talking
needs to be
4-H youth. 4-H youth as an entity.
Okay.
4-H youth at the entity. So if in some counties, in order to show at fair, you're required to be a member of 4-H. Some other counties where it's open, you're not required to be a member of 4-H. You could be a member of 4-H or a member of FFA, and that depends on that local fair board.
And that is Eaton County,
Well,
correct? They're open?
The Eaton County is open. Well, and you'll have to forgive me, I don't have my 4-H program coordinator, but I think you have to be an FFA or 4-H or
A
you can
club
be
or,
open.
yeah,
Right.
okay.
But that's a separate deal. That's 2 weeks out of the whole year that a 4-H program runs. So it's predominantly 4-H youth that still are selling at the auction. But that money now is, with this last year, any commission off those sales goes to a separate committee, a new committee that the Fair Board formed. That's not a 4-H entity. The 4-H entity has to be run according to 4-H financial, and that they get the oversight, they get the screening of volunteers, the whole shot. So that conflict, and I hate to say this, but over dollars, seems to arise when a large amount of money is raised at an auction. And that's why I just suspect that 30,000 is what you're talking about. I don't know for a fact. I'll have to check it because I don't want to misspeak either. Yeah. But I know from other counties, sometimes those livestock committees, which are 4-H committees, raise a lot of money, and they have more money in their banks than some of these other clubs, like say the quilting club. And whenever there's a large amount of money, then there's a, what can we do with that money? And that creates conflict.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Anybody else have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple questions.
Sure.
Because I was contacted by a constituent about this, or several actually, but your statewide budget is roughly 76 million from what I discovered from last year's budget figures. Does that sound about right?
I'm not going to argue with that. It's in that range, yes.
Okay. And then,
or a little higher than that, yes.
yeah, and then each county that participates is required to participate with at least a minimum of $30,000.
Well, I'll answer that with a response to how that's done, and I can't give the particulars. So first of all, you've got the funding where you've got approximately 15% of funding for MSU Extension comes through local funding. That's through the local county. So that formula, that assessment, was calculated years ago based on the population of the county, the population of youth in the county, and there's a lot of factors that went into it that was before my time. I can get those specifics. But then they came up with a formula that said, all right, this is the basic assessment for each one of these counties based on those facts and figures. In that assessment also was tied to it a 4-H program coordination, okay? And so some annual assessments for some counties didn't include a full 4-H program coordination because that number of factors entered into that. Eaton County specifically, within that assessment includes 1.0 FTE of 4-H program coordination, okay? So that's that part of it. So, you know, here, the base assessment, I think it's 84,000 and some change, whatever that last number that I gave to you. That's the base assessment here. Other counties, it may be 60,000 because they're a smaller population. It may be 154,500 and some odd dollars, and that's in Ingham County. I just know that off the top of my head. So those amounts differ based on the counties throughout the state. Obviously, a county in the UP is going to be different. But it's based on those calculations that were figured out years ago when there was a restructuring that was done, and county commissioners were brought in as part of that team to work through those facts and figures to figure out that base assessment. Does that help?
It does, but one of the other things that I noted was that the participating counties, out of the 83 in Michigan, 49 were participating counties, leaving, 34 counties that I guess were deemed non-participating. Does that mean they have no 4-H presence in their county?
Okay, well, and I'm not going to argue with that because I don't know the number, but let me just go based on what I know. So we have some sort of agreement with all 83 counties now. We had one, we only used to have 82 because one county, I believe it's Oscoda, had completely pulled out all funding. And in that county, during that time, there was no 4-H program at all. There was no programming. And then we ended up providing nutrition education because that was basic. We were receiving those federal dollars and whatnot to provide it. So we allocated personnel to go do it. So that was one county removed. There are other counties where they've gone through financial issues, whether for various reasons, and they've pulled fundings. And then we've asked to have a millage go before the voters. So we have a number of millage counties that instead of the county board directly funding the program through the general fund, they allow it to go to the voters, and the voters have passed those millages predominantly favorably. I mean, there's a few that have failed, but predominantly favorably. But I'm not aware of other counties besides the one I mentioned that don't currently have 4-H programs that also don't have some type of contract. Now, I can think of one, or I can think of two, and this is outside my jurisdiction, so I'm going based on just conversation. But Roscommon had issues, so they pulled back funding. For a time, Saginaw did, but now that's been restored with a millage. I believe it has. Where we stayed and continued to offer those programs. And the reason we did that was we pulled from extra dollars elsewhere that we had in their much less expensive counties in order to keep those programs going until we could find some other source of funding, meaning either a successful millage or improved conditions in the county where they could provide the funding, but never in a long-term situation. But that has led to some confusion as well, where there's been some programming. In other words, it's in this office, I've got someone that's going to have to be let go, right? I've got more than one person that's going to have to be let go. So there are jobs that they will lose. That's something like you all, when you see a county position that you have to eliminate, not just not hire or not just eliminate the position, but when you have to let someone go, it's a very difficult thing. And I know the county's had to go through that as well, but we have to do that too. So we hesitate to do that at all costs. So if we can find some other way to retain those employees, like our support staff person here, Cynthia, who doesn't get a lot of airtime, she's a phenomenal employee, but there's nowhere else for her to go. I mean, obviously she can find another job, but there's nowhere else for her to go within extension unless some position is eliminated elsewhere and she can fill that in. So it's those difficult choices that you all have to make that we have to make as well.
Okay, so MSU Extension Services will still exist within Eaton County, it just that the 4-H portion of it will not be funded.
Now, MSU Extension will exist as part of the university. The MSU Extension serves everyone in the state, regardless of whether or not we have a local presence. Okay, so in that sense, it will remain present. In this particular circumstance, because you all haven't said that to pull a moving truck up and load up stuff and get out, and you did pass, or it's not passed yet, but as part of the budget, there's the liability insurance, et cetera, which, you know, obviously if there's people in there, you got to make sure that they're insured. It's not going to happen right away, but if we can't find replacement funding, it is going to happen by necessity, because if you have the whole piece of the pie, like your budget, if we're missing part of it and we can't find another way to fund that, then we have to eliminate it. So it's that local presence. It's that local service to the public to come to the door. I mean, I've spent a half hour with somebody with a tree branch in our office before when I was in the office and trying to figure out stuff for them. I mean, it's the stuff like that that we do.
I grew up on a dairy farm, so I know how MSU Extension contributes, so thank you. That's all I have. Any, Commissioner Hart?
How many local presences for MSU Extension are under threat of removal or extinguishment?
I think that just like with any county funding that goes through years of having some good times, some bad times, these things crop up from time to time. That's how we ended up having other counties that were funded through a millage, because there was those financial difficulties. Right now, as I speak, I can speak of my district. Okay, so Ingham County has some issues right now. They had a $10.5 million shortfall. Right after the meeting that I was at here, I was at a late night meeting there. And I want to compliment you all, by the way. They hold their committee meetings in a room with one microphone, and that's for the public comment. That's great. Can't hear anything the commissioners are saying, and that's not an open meeting. That's just, I've had to vent about that. So I appreciate the microphones. So those are two counties here that have issues. I mean, there's other counties here, and I don't want to speak of their business, that there's a struggle here and there as far as that goes, but predominantly we're doing pretty good in my district. I know in the UP, there was one county, and it was primarily for political reasons, feelings of the commissioners, where that partnership looks like it's coming to an end there in one of those counties. I don't know what the status is of my cohorts throughout the state as far as our other counties, but that's what I know, I'll tell you, and that's what I know.
Any other questions, concerns, comments? Commissioner Barber?
This is a question to the administration. If MSU Extension wants to put a millage on the ballot, I know that the board can approve that. Is there another way for them to get a millage on the ballot? I think, correct me if I'm wrong once again, but I think they can do a petition, right, and get enough signatures in which they can put a millage on the ballot. Is that correct?
Yes, and they would have to go through legal counsel to do that. They'd have to do that process. The county doesn't help them, the clerk doesn't help, so they would go through that process, but yes.
I just want to.
Board, just
Okay.
to be clear, the board is the one that levies that. So every year you levy, you just did that today, so every year you levy a millage, and you don't have to levy a
But
millage. But
if
yes, they can
but
put
if-
it on the ballot, the voters vote for it.
Yeah.
The levy is still up to the board.
Yeah, so, okay. I just wanted to make sure I understood.
Yes.
Can I say something about millages?
Yes.
And that's something that if you all would give us that option, I would certainly explore that. You know, whether it be May or probably more reasonably August. If the board would agree to put us on the ballot, then we'd come up with the language that the board would then approve, the amount, the mill. And that's something that we would forecast, just like you do with the, what is that, 4029? I can't remember the number of that. But we look at that and multiply it out and see what we need. My personal experience with that, and I do have personal experience with that, is that the taxpayers end up getting taxed more than if we're funded directly through the county commissioners. Even though it's all oversight through the county commissioners, and it should be, every penny should come through the local board. But my experience is that's the fund balances start to grow, and so more dollars are taken from the taxpayer going that route. Even though I would certainly advocate for that if that's all we're left, but just my 2 cents.
Okay, I got a question related to that then. What if a group, a 4-H group, so we've got Eaton County 4-H clubs, they band together, form a coalition, they decide to fund it themselves. Is that a possibility?
I won't say it's not. It goes with complications that it would have to be looked at. It's just like anybody can donate to MSU Extension. They can donate to a local 4-H program. But how those are used, that has to, and that really takes out that local partnership with you all. That would make it a separate organization. So it would have to be some type of hybrid where there's some connection there. Because it's more than just 4-H, obviously. It's like you said, I've got 2 dairy educators in my district, many field crops educators, and they, you know, it's some of the way that, because of the 4-H is so intimately connected to local funding, that also becomes a clouded view, right? Everybody thinks it's just about 4-H, it's about all those other programs as well.
All right. Any other comments, questions? Well, thank you for that. I hope you didn't feel like this was an inquisition, because it wasn't intended to be.
Listen, I want to say I am very thankful for the opportunity just to answer questions. I could do a better job of keeping you all informed. Where I can improve that, I want to improve that.
Okay. Commissioner Hanson has a question.
Yes. Has MSU Extension ever received funds from the MSU endowment funds?
Not to my knowledge.
Is that a possibility of obtaining funds from them for shortfalls for things
I
like?
don't believe so. I believe that any funds from, there's a small percentage of MSU that comes to MSU Extension. I think it's a very, very small, but that's out of their general fund. And so when MSU had to recently implement, I think it's a 9% cut we had to go around and cut our percentage of that percentage. But no, we don't have any access to those funds to my knowledge.
Because I heard that they're sitting on a over $4 billion endowment fund.
Yeah, and I hear the same things, Commissioner Hanson. And to my knowledge, there's no ability for MSU Extension to access that. And I don't want to get into MSU policy. We're part of them. We're part of the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources. But we have a separate line item through the state. We fund all our own legacy costs individually. So even though every employee of Extension is an employee of MSU, it's still all separate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? All right, well, thank you for your time. We do appreciate it.
You're welcome. I appreciate it as well. And thank you.
Having nothing else on our agenda, should we adjourn? We're just shy of 4 hours here. Oh, okay. Yeah, absolutely.
Speaker. I know it's been a long meeting. I talked with Commissioner DeRosa one day, and we were talking about revenue stuff that was, being shortfalled here in the county and stuff. And have we ever considered a county income tax, like you do for the cities, or this, we got the state income tax, about a county?
You can't do a county income tax, sorry. You can't do a county income tax. The way that we're able to do it is through millages and our general property tax. That's the difference between like a township that can do, a charter township that can do special assessments, and then cities that can raise special assessments and income tax, but the county can't do that.
What about like other states, like Indiana? I think they have a county income tax.
So other states operate differently than the county, but the state of Michigan, we can't do that, a county income tax. Now, the state, when we talk about revenue sharing, that's essentially what the state is doing. They're passing on that money to the municipalities. But ours isn't protected, and they're cutting it right now in the House is what we're looking at. So that was a resolution we did earlier. So you're really subjected as a county to property taxes, which is the big controversy.
Okay, I was just trying to, maybe we could spread this out.
I'd love that.
with workers that come into the county to work. I mean.
Would love it.
Indiana, all the counties are within that.
Yeah.
But it would, spread out, people coming into work and stuff like that. So that's a question I needed to ask to find out if that could happen.
It's a great question.
Okay, thank you.
All right, now.
My name's John Pepper.
Yeah, John. Thanks, John. Commissioner Arndt.
One question. The resolution to approve entering into intergovernmental agreements with Eaton County townships, was that all the townships or just the civic townships, or what exactly is the nature of the agreement with the charter townships?
So we did not, that did not go through this committee, so it was not approved to pass through, but it was for the general law townships, so no charter townships. It's the 11, and they're listed in the resolution.
For planning and zoning.
For planning and zoning.
I mean, I know that the planning commission stuff couldn't apply to charter townships anyway, but I didn't know if you could set an agreement with them otherwise.
You could do that. I mean, they could come to the county and ask for services. So like a smaller township, we used to handle some of those, you could do that, but,
That's why I asked the question.
Yeah.
because-
Mhm.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Commissioner Barber, are you,
I think you have a second over there.
oh, is that a second? Is that a second? All right, all those in favor say aye. We will see you next Wednesday.